Meeting of the Santa Barbara Unified School District's Board of Education for Tuesday, November 13th, 2018. And we will begin by rising to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Matsuoka.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Where's our interpreter?
Buenas noches. Esta noche tenemos interpretación al español si alguien prefiere escuchar esta presentación en español. Gracias.
Thank you. And headsets for the hearing impaired are available, so please indicate if you need a headset. Moving forward, for C5, we did not have any announcements to come out of closed session, so moving then to C6, Superintendent's Report, and we are going to move forward from that. We just had a great recognition honoring Kate Parker and Ishmael Paredes Ulloa. So, yeah, we can give him a hand. So we'll have an opportunity to just speak to that maybe a little bit for our board comments and correspondence. So, board members. All right, well, I will say that we did have an opportunity to recognize Kate Parker for 12 years of service. And yeah, wow, pretty down to earth wow. It is a big wow, and we're thankful for all that she's done. And we're thankful that we have her on speed dial so that whenever we have questions, we'll be able to access her. And also, of course, to Ishmael Paredes Ulloa for his wonderful contribution to the board and 2 years of bringing forward such amazing work towards equity and access. So thank you both. Also, I would just like to announce that we're going to have our Coffee with the Board this Friday. This is something that we launched a few months ago. We have met with Harding Elementary. First, Ms. Sims-Moten and myself with meeting with parents. We had over 40 parents come, and we were pleased to have an opportunity to bring a conversation and transparency and build relationships, which we think is hugely important as board members, is to connect with our community and our schools and our administrative staff. We also had a coffee with the board at San Marcos High School with Mr. Ishmael Paredes Ulloa and Ms. Capps. They had the opportunity to meet with parents there. And we will have another one this Friday, which will be at Monroe Elementary. And Ms. Capps and myself will be there from 8:30 to 9:30 to welcome conversation with parents at that elementary school. So I'm hoping this is something that we continue to do going forward because we really feel, I believe as a board, that this opportunity to connect and have this transparency and communication is hugely important. And for us to be able to hear your voices and concerns and be able to understand your perspectives. So thank you for that. We are going to now move to public comments, non-agenda matters within jurisdiction of the Board of Education. Ms. Sims-Moten.
Yes, I have two requests to speak, Madam President. Kate O'Connell, followed by Melissa Lowenstein.
Hi, it's Kate Connell. They used the O as a lifesaver when they went over the Atlantic Ocean, but it's okay. Anyway, I'm actually here to give I heard a lot of appreciations out there for Kate and Ishmael, and that's why I'm here. I am a parent of a student at Santa Barbara High, but I'm also the coordinator of Truth in Recruitment, and Kate Parker was the president of the board when that policy was drafted, and we met with her and Pedro pause and had an amazing discussion, and she thought, this was in May of 2014, and she's like, oh, I think we'll get this passed by August. And I was like, what? Okay. She presented to Dave Cash, who took it to our high school principals, John being one of them. Actually, John is the one who suggested we bring it to the board. It was a protocol that, among other things, restricted recruiters to 2 visits a year, stopped them from collecting student contact information directly from students. And Kate, you were just really instrumental and supportive of that policy, which was passed in October 14th. Just want to read the purpose and scope. It is to ensure that district students have balanced access to information about the range of educational and career options available to them so they can make informed decisions. This exhibit also establishes recruiter conduct guidelines to protect student confidentiality and preserve the custodial rights of parents and legal guardians. So that was passed in 2014, and in the last year, Ismael and Sean and Truth in Recruitment parents and students and community members, as well as veterans who are part of the community, met with you and had some really productive discussions clarifying the best way to implement that policy. So just want to really appreciate both of your work. I'm sad that you're both going, but I know that you are going to be moving on to greater things. Well, other things with as much importance. And as you can see, I'm wearing this shirt, and I know you both are supportive of this, and this will be coming up later. But a shout out to the work that you've done in that way, and to Sean for all the work that you've done to support our students and make sure that they can make educated choices, know all their options, and have just that balance of access for alternative points of views, different kinds
30
of
seconds.
Thank you. Wow. I guess I got real 3 minutes, not 2 minutes.
did.
I'm not used to this. I'm like, don't know. Anyway, yeah, I mean, it's an ongoing relationship that started with talking with you all, and I appreciated that at the end of that meeting in October, there was a school board member who was talking about how he just wanted to honor the men and women who served in the armed forces. And Kate, you said, yeah, but they're so young.
Time.
And I just think that that's just really important to know that the responsibility of this board and the schools to make sure our students are given the support and that their confidentiality is supported or protected. Thanks.
Thank you. Melissa Lowenstein, to be followed by Annette Cordero.
So I have some media here, and I realized I was supposed to get approval of this before I bought it and foisted it on the media person. So I'm asking permission to show a brief slideshow about AHA. And it's totally okay. If not, I will just speak. It's under 3 minutes.
Oh,
Yeah? Oh, thank you
members
so
of
much.
the board, are you okay with that moving forward? Okay.
Take you 3 minutes to load it. So are we pausing the clock, or are we continuing?
Yes, we'll give you the 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So I'll just say a couple words about this while it's loading. I'm making the most of my week as a cover girl. For those of you who, it's upside down? There we go. So the Independent was gracious and wonderful enough to put us on their cover in their yearly issue on education. And I am speaking for AHA. There's 25 of us, and they did slap my picture on the cover, but there are 25 of us doing this work in the district. And we just want to state our gratitude again to the district for allowing us to bring social emotional learning to grades 7 through 12. And I'm going to make sure that Mr. Becchio has the right version of the slideshow. So I'm going to stop talking, and I'm just going to let you take a look at what we're up to and why we think it makes such a big difference in the schools. If anybody feels like singing, clapping, could have some music to go with it. We're looking at slides of the work that AHA does with youth in the district. AHA stands for Attitude, Harmony, Achievement. And if you want to learn more about us, you can go to our website, ahasb.org. Are you seeing people you know? That's so cool. So you're seeing footage from our Peace Builders programs in the school district, from some service work we did with the Bucket Brigade. We bring teens together in healthy community with skillful facilitation, and we teach them social and emotional skills, and we help them recognize how awesome they are and how they can be fully expressed and deeply connected with people who can support them in times of stress, and how to support each other. That's from Sing It Out, writing appreciations, doing some crafts. Yeah. Yeah, shout out names if you see people you know. Yeah.
Thirty seconds.
Thank you. So we're serving 2,000 to 3,000 kids a year in school and out of school. This year we're training educators in our methods at Santa Barbara High and in CARP.
Is that it?
Yeah, so thank you for sharing in that with us, and we just wanted to share some goodness with you today. Thank you.
Thank you. Annette Cordero, to be followed by Anna Marie Gott.
Hello, members of the board, assistant superintendents and superintendent, thank you for being here and for allowing us to be here. I hadn't really anticipated speaking here tonight, but we were out at UCSB at a cultural event, and I had to drive over here and got stuck behind a traffic accident. So I missed the reception for the two board members who are leaving the board today, and I just wanted to express my appreciation for all the work that you have done on behalf of the district, on behalf of those students who often didn't have a voice. Ms. Parker and I served together, and at the time that we were on the board together, it wasn't always as unified as we would have liked, and sometimes it really took some strenuous attempts to persuade the board the right things to do. And I just wanted to say to both of you, I know personally how hard it is to make this kind of a commitment and the time that it takes. People think it's just these board meetings, but it's so much more than that. It takes time away from your families, takes time away from your personal life. And for Kate to have done it for 12 years, that's longer than I was able to sustain it. It has just been a tremendous importance to our entire district. The students, all the people who are employed by the district, the members of the community whom the district serves, you have touched thousands and thousands and thousands of lives. And you have done it in a way that has just been so important. So I also want to be, having served with Ms. Parker, I just want to say thank you, Kate, for being one of the greatest colleagues ever. And I brought something with me because I am so thrilled that I teach at Santa Barbara City College, as most of you know. Kate is moving on to our board of trustees, and I am so thrilled to have you there. And so I brought you a few welcoming items so you will remember who your allegiances are to now.
Thank you. Okay. Anne Marie.
Hi, my name is Anne Marie Gott, and this is the first time I've ever been to one of these meetings. Decided to speak because I just came from a city council meeting that I thought that you should be aware of. And also to let you know about a project that is right next to the Santa Barbara Junior High School. I don't know if you are concerned about safe passage and travel to schools. I don't know if you are concerned about sidewalks and how kids actually get to Santa Barbara Junior High School. But there's a project that is at 711 North Milpas that will be seen on Monday at the Architectural Board of Review in Santa Barbara. It's up for final review. And your board should have actually known about it years ago when it started through the process. But you were never notified from what I can understand. You should have been notified because the Santa Barbara Junior High School is adjacent to the property. But when I came to the school this summer, no one was really interested in it. Let me tell you about 711 North Milpas. It will provide unaffordable housing to Santa Barbara. There will also be a small sidewalk of some sort. I don't really even understand that it's actually a sidewalk because it's on private property. That will end in a loading zone. So children actually coming around the corner from Milpas are going to walk through a loading zone across a private parking lot into the street to get to the school instead of having a real sidewalk. They shouldn't actually be doing that. And your board should have known because there was an agreement between the city of Santa Barbara and your school district and sometime in the 1980s that any development that you would be notified. And you would actually get a list of all of the projects that might affect your kids as they're coming back and forth to school. But I don't believe that that's actually ever happened. And if anyone is interested in attending that meeting on Monday, I would really urge them to come because it is going to actually gentrify the neighborhood. It is going to bring unaffordable housing to Milpas. And it actually, I personally believe it's going to endanger the kids because they're going to be walking straight into a loading zone as they come off a sidewalk, through a parking lot, and then to the back of the school because it's right there at the corner of Milpas and East Ortega. The next thing I wanted to let you know about, and this may or may not be relevant to anyone, but our city council just decided that they were going to go ahead and allow at the commuter lot at the corner of Castillo and Carrillo
Time. Finish your sentence. But
40 tiny homes for the homeless without any noticing. If it can be dumped in that area of town, it can be dumped anywhere, and the city needs to be transparent, and the people need to understand what may happen in their areas. Thank you.
thank you. That concludes the public comment, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So moving on to D, acceptance of donations for November 13th, 2018.
I move to accept donations with gratitude.
I just had a quick question on the donations. Do I need to wait till after the second?
I'll second it.
I just did have a question, and I did speak to Ms. Chate and actually Mr. Rickman. I don't think either one are here today. I was just concerned that on the donations with regards to iPads to Washington School, I was just trying to determine if there were extra ones that we needed or we were short materials. And so I just wanted to find out if we have a process for donations for learning materials. And so it may not be answered today, but I just wanted to bring that up in terms of my concerns with that. Also, when we're having such large donations, although very much appreciated, because I know the things we're not able to do, the community certainly steps in, but when we're having those large donations, we want to make sure, are they MOUs that may need to happen as a result that that donation is coming forth? I know we have about a $29,000 donation, and it just wasn't really clear as to what it was going to be and what the responsibility of the district was.
Thank you, Ms. Sims-Moten. All right. Moving on to the consent agenda.
Got a call vote.
I'm sorry, we need to vote.
Yes.
Uh,
All in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and it passes unanimously. Moving on to the consent agenda, are there any items that fellow board members would like to pull?
Yeah, I'd just like to pull item E1, please. I'm sorry, E11.
Okay.
E10,
anyone?
I'm sorry, one more time. E10,
So, E10,
the last one, yep.
okay.
E21.
Ms. Parker?
E18 briefly.
And then we have two,
We have a consent agenda item, request
So-
to speak on agenda item 10.
so,
Consent.
okay, so we have that pulled as well.
Yes. we already have.
So typically, we move these to the end of the meeting. Are these, I guess I would just ask if these are brief
Quick.
comments,
Yeah.
quick comments? They all are quick comments? Okay. So why don't we go ahead and discuss them now? Why don't we start with E10?
Great, well, thank you. I just pulled it. It's the approval of contract between AHA, Attitude, Harmony, and Achievement, and Santa Barbara Unified School District. Out of full support for, and I was happy that our public speaker already gave 3 minutes and some visuals, so there's no need for that. But really, I just wanted to pull it because in the spirit of transparency, there's been a lot of focus on our work, as there should be, on social and emotional learning, and this is one piece of it. It's $21,000, and I just wanted to, I could have Dr. Wagner speak to it, but if you wanted to just give a sentence or two about what this actually funds, again, just so that the public is aware of how we are working with our students on social and emotional learning. Thanks.
So, is my mic on? Okay. This summer, Dr. Simmons requested entering into an agreement with AHA to pilot some work around social emotional learning. There are two primary facets to this. The first is the training of up to 34 teachers. They ended up 2 full-day trainings with 29 ninth grade teachers. And that training also includes ongoing one-on-one support as requested for the teachers. It also includes an additional training, full-day training in December and another in the spring. So that's one half of the MOU. The other MOU is, half of the MOU is to provide a once-a-week class on social emotional learning to the ASB leadership class at Santa Barbara High School throughout the 2018-19 school year.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Wagner. Thank you.
And then we have the request to speak, Nick Aguilar.
Good evening, how y'all doing?
Evening.
Nicolas Aguilar. I'm also in support of ethnic studies and what's going on, and just want to say that it's important, as well as what we do in AHA with SEL and having also ethnic studies be implemented as a way to be able to support our youth from both ways, is SEL and also education. So I'm a facilitator at AHA. I'm a head facilitator and also a Peace Builder coordinator. Just to support this MOU as well with the school district. I grew up in Santa Barbara. I've been working and living here in Santa Barbara with in various capacities, just working with youth as I started volunteering all the way to now. And I just want to say that for our program, seeing our youth, I'm beyond proud of the youth that come in. They're already amazing, resilient, powerful human beings. that are leaders in our community, and if they know it or not, they find out through our program, through social emotional learning, where they cultivate empathy and peace building in our community. Our teens really do connect with a lot of the youth that's out there, whether already with their social groups that they're in, but also with like people who are outside on the margins. They do a job of just connecting with those students, and I've seen a lot of students who could have potentially been those to harm others or themselves and be able to reach out to them. And just seeing the compassion that they build for those youth, and just in school climate, like what they do with teachers and talking to them and having conversations. It's amazing to see them, and when they report back to me, I'm always amazed. I'm like, wow, y'all do, I mean, I'm the facilitator, but you teach me a lot in what you do. And so, and just seeing that program for me as we're a youth, where I was involved in everything, but seeing this kind of program and what it does for youth and what it does for the community, really being able to connect and see our teens be empowered to like then go through like ethnic studies and find their voice and be able to use it there, or just be out about, just like if they were ever in a space where, you know, they were quiet, they find their voice through other programs like Sing It Out. And any kind of like vehicle that we use as well is like programs like our creative group. If they're not really about speaking out in public, they find ways to creatively like express themselves and connect with other people who are in that same kind of boat. And so there's like those various forms of being able to help our youth. And so any form that we can do that in our after school programs, in school, as well as out in the community, any form where we can provide that support for our students, it speaks to their experience and what they can do with it. Because we get teens that go off to college and they create that space out there, and they just speak to coming back to saying like, I did Thorns and Roses with my college dorm and I got them connected where nobody spoke with each other, you know, like that kind of space is created. So if we keep teaching it, there'll be more that, you know, where SEL goes out. So please support. Thank you.
Thank you.
So E18,
This is just a quick question for Mr. Vizzolini, and that's about the timeline, because it says it's November and it's hoping to go to DSA September 2018, and that doesn't, it seems optimistic.
I have to apologize.
It's okay.
The dates are wrong. I would request that I can get back to the board with the correct dates.
Sure.
This is for the architectural services agreement, so we can get the design done. I don't have an answer for where
All
those
right,
dates came
just
from.
just as that could be something that comes in the superintendent's Friday letter whenever you have the right timeline.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you.
and E21.
Yes, this question is also for Mr. Vizzolini. I just first want to thank you for moving the date up with regards to repairing the pavement at Adams School. In fact, I think this came forth in a public comment, and we actually had some crumbling a visual here to see what's actually happening. So thank you for that. But in the meantime, so I know it's some time before we get there. So what's happening to make sure that our children are safe during the time that we're waiting to repair it? Are there like yellow cautions that they're not able to access until we get that repaired?
I don't believe it's that bad. To be perfectly honest with you, we have walked it with Flowers and Associates ahead of time, and with the principal and with some parents. We have a plan to do some grinding. There were some places, we bought a crack seal machine and made some mitigation effects, and it was their first attempt. So the idea is that they've been over there to scrape some of those down so that they're not sticking up. That's really the issue at this point. But we are planning on doing this summer.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, so it looks like we're just going to move forward with the consent agenda items. And do I have a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And we move on. That passes unanimously. So we are now moving forward to our public hearing. I will now close the regular board meeting for our public hearing item F1. Second reading, sunshining of the Santa Barbara Unified School District proposal for successor contract negotiations with Santa Barbara Teachers Association. During this public hearing, we will allow 3 minutes, 6 if it's needed for translation. Public hearings are a time to listen to public comment, but we don't discuss the item. Do we have any public comment at this time?
No request to speak at this time.
All right, is there any comments by Dr. Becchio?
Good evening, Dr. Reed, members of the board. These are just, again, your second viewing, and also an opportunity for the community to see these, but this is our sunshining of the, our proposal to go to negotiation with the Santa Barbara Teachers Association. Intention is to negotiate wages and compensation, health and welfare benefits, and hours and conditions. And we also have the second viewing of the sunshining for the Santa Barbara Teachers Association and their negotiations with Santa Barbara Unified, and their intentions are to negotiate wages, health and welfare evaluations, and, I'm sorry, that's the CSEA. You have that up
Hold
here.
off on that one.
I'll hold off on the CSEA one. That's
Yes.
the first time you're going to see that tonight. Wages and compensation, health and welfare benefits, and hours and conditions for.
Okay. So, I believe, Dr. Becchio, thank you. And that brings us to the end of our public hearing, since we did not have public comment. And I now will open the public hearing for item F2, and I'm going to hit that gavel again. Second reading, sunshining of the Santa Barbara Unified School District proposal for successor contract negotiations with California School Employee Association. Do we have any public comments at this time?
No public request
All
to
right.
speak.
Thank you. Dr. Becchio, would you like to add anything at this time with regards to this second reading?
Sorry, I'm trying to do the technology and also get my items. So this is the CSEA one?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is your, this should be your first viewing of this. Is that correct?
It's actually our second, yes.
Did I bring that for you last
Yes.
board meeting? Okay.
Yes.
So, again, they are intending to negotiate wages and compensation, health and welfare, and, sorry, that's the SBTA one. Here we go. Wages, health and benefits, evaluations, and the catastrophic leave bank. And so the CSEA's intention is to negotiate those, and then we'll bring those back for action at our next board meeting with your consent.
Thank you. So thank you for this. That brings us to the end of this public hearing. And the last of the gavel for a moment. We will now return to our regular meeting, our action agenda items. So moving forward to board action on student discipline, Education Code 48918, case number 201819-06.
In the cases 20181906, stipulated agreement, move approval of expulsion with enforcement suspended 2 semesters, which ends June 2019.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
And it passes unanimously. Moving to board action on student discipline, Education Code 48918, case number 201819-07.
In the case of 201819-07, stipulated agreement, move approval, full expulsion, 2 semesters, which ends June 2019.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. We will now move to action agenda item approval of second amendment and modification to superintendent's employment agreement. So I'd like to share that in closed session, the board has completed its rigorous annual review of the superintendent and will be adjusting his contract. Pursuant to the terms of his contract, the board is required to complete its annual evaluation on or before December 1st of each year. Before us is an amendment to the superintendent's employment agreement that extends Superintendent Matsuoka's contract for 1 year from June 30th, 2020 to June 30th, 2021. The only other changes consist of a small increase in the contribution to the IRC 403B retirement plan and allowing the superintendent to receive pay for 4 additional vacation days not taken. So I'll now turn to the board if there are any comments or questions by our board members. Ms. Capps.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to make a comment. I just want to speak to the timing of this because I've received some questions from parents, and some of you might be wondering about the timing. And also, regrettably, when I went to the San Marcos Coffee with the Board, I just misspoke. I was misinformed myself. I thought that the process was, his contract was up December 31st, when in fact, our board, as just stated, is required to take action by December 1st. So I've apologized to a few of those parents, but just want to speak to that process and timing just purely from the process. Not only is it required in his contract that we take this action tonight, but I also believe, having gone through this process and the rigorous evaluation that we've done, that it is our responsibility as a board to have done that evaluation. It is us he has reported to day in, day out for the last 2 years. It is us who conducted this very thorough review, again, starting in August, fully agendized, as transparent as can be for a personnel evaluation, and quite an extensive one. So therefore, I just wanted to give an explanation why this vote is happening this evening as opposed to in the future date. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Capps. So do I have a motion?
I'll move approval of Superintendent Matsuoka's contract modifications, and thank you so much for your service this past year.
And I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And thank you, Mr. Matsuoka, for your service. Moving forward to action agenda item number 4, approval of resolution 2018/19-22, amended conflict of interest code and appendix pursuant to government code section 87306. Dr. Becchio.
Thank you very much. This is a resolution that we bring forward to you each year. It is required that we bring this forward each year and have updates to this actual resolution made. You will see in the appendix that essentially there's just a couple of language changes, and hopefully you saw the red strikeouts, and they're pretty minor language changes, but most important and most notable is the fact that we have all of our new positions or positions that have changed titles in this new appendix, and you'll see those also in red. And so recommending that you adopt the new resolution with the updated language.
Thank you, Dr. Becchio. Do we have any questions or comments, board? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Moving on to action agenda item 5, adoption of resolution 2018-19-23 regarding the elimination or reduction of classified services. Dr. Becchio.
Okay, thank you very much. In this item, let me zoom in. This item before you, Ed Code does allow us to issue layoffs for either lack of work or lack of funds, and this particular item is lack of funds at La Cumbre Junior High, necessitating the reduction in time, which would constitute a layoff. So the proposal here is that we reduce this position from a 1.0 to a 0.75. I believe that's a loss of 2 hours per day. So it goes from an 8-hour position to a 6-hour position.
Thank you. Board? Yes, Ms. Sims-Moton.
So is this position currently filled?
Yes.
Okay, so are we actually laying that position off as opposed to just notifying that the hours are being reduced? or-
The hours are being reduced. It is a layoff of 2 hours in that position, though. It's not a full layoff of the entire position, but the person serving an 8-hour position, they'll be reduced to 6.
So is
So we
it-
will notify that employee that they would be reduced to 6 hours.
So I'm just trying to understand layoff versus reduction in hours, because layoff means you're no longer there. So is it just me misunderstanding the language?
It's a reduction
Layoff
in
versus-
hours.
Okay, not necessarily a layoff, they're not leaving.
The employee will still be in a position, it'll just be a 6-hour position.
Okay, and then my next question is, so how does this impact student services to students at all, or?
That I'm not aware of, and I don't know if Sean can help out with this particular position at La Cumbre. It's STEAM. think it's the lab tech position, isn't it?
This is, if you'll notice the funding source, this is from the site's, what we call LCAP funding or 0790 or supplemental grant funding. And there were some shifts to that site's funding to just ensure fiscal solvency this year.
So there's no direct negative impact to students?
So the 8 hours actually extends beyond a school day, and this individual is providing direct support for students. So the students should not feel the effects of the 2-hour layoff in terms of how it affects their instructional day.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you.
Ms. Parker?
At this point, we actually don't, obviously, in this materials, we don't know who this employee is, but I just want to be sure that the La Cumbre community knows about all of this and that nobody's being blindsided. So I just want to check on that.
Okay. I'm not aware of that being something that you've talked about at the site, have you, Sean? I would imagine that the employee is aware.
The site is aware.
All right. Do you have anything more to add, Ms.?
No, I mean, I don't like doing this kind of thing after the school year has started and somebody is, and it's rare to see it come forward at this particular time. And so I move forward, I will go ahead and move approval, but I recognize that this certainly will disrupt one employee and could disrupt a program. And so I hope that this is the sort of thing that in the future, and I know that this is a very unusual year at La Cumbre, but that this is something, hopefully with, when there is a new principal in place, we're able to keep an eye on that, and so that this doesn't happen at this time of year in particular. And I'll go ahead and move that we approve the adoption of Resolution 2018-19-23.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Ms. Parker, though, for those comments. I think that it's something we want to be aware of as we move forward. Moving on to action agenda item 6, approval of a facility memorandum of understanding MOU between the Santa Barbara Unified School District and Dos Pueblos Engineering Academy, DPEAF. Mr. Matsuoka.
So we have kept the board informed through many different reports along the way. This started actually back in November, almost a year ago, with the submission of the request for funds. So this is the culmination of a long conversation with the DPEA Foundation leaders. Craig Price has been the primary author of this MOU, and it outlines, I would say, the commitments of both parties, the district as well as the foundation. And you can see the fundraising goal that the foundation has committed themselves to. And so this MOU is placed strategically first before the next item, which is asking your approval of the full architect design agreement to design to the whole spec. And so what I appreciate about the leaders in the foundation is the fundraising has already begun, and they are ready to transfer funds to the architect contract. So rest assured that they are fundraising, and there's plenty of steps where we can press pause should we need to. But I'm very confident that the foundation and their leadership will raise the funds to secure this vision. So there's, it's actually a fairly short MOU. Mr. Price did a masterful job at recrafting it. Be glad to answer any questions before you consider this.
Do we have any questions? Sims Moten.
Yeah, I just had a question. If you could pull that back up again, John. Just want to understand, I believe it's E, the fiscal impact. Is that a soft match, meaning that we've already granted other contracts? That's not a direct $4 million hard match to this project, right? It's through other projects that we've funded. I'm just trying to understand what that means.
So we are matching that through the Measure I funds that were set aside for Dos Pueblos High School for replacement of portable classrooms. So we have that match in hand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I just wanted to say that I do appreciate the process of the unfolding of this amazing project and the transparency at which you provided us with information was very helpful. And so but by getting to this place, we've done a lot of work in analyzing it and providing opportunities for questions, and so it's an exciting place to be in. Ms. Parker.
I'll echo that and just say, so many times our foundations at our school sites step up to assist and to make better what we would have done in a more limited way just because of the scope. And I appreciate, it looks like their DPEA will be trying to raise just over $3 million towards this project. I think that it's really commendable. I think it's going to be a great project when it's done. I'm excited that I get to sign off on it now and hopeful to be there when it's finished.
Would you like to make the motion, Ms. Parker?
And I'll note too that the total amount will raise at least 6.4 million. I was looking at number 10 above that for, Mr. Matsuoka, you're probably going, oh no, let's say 6 million, right? Yeah, even better. Yes, I will move approval of the facility memorandum of understanding between Santa Barbara Unified and the Dos Pueblos Engineering Academy Foundation.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. It passes unanimously. Moving on to action agenda item 7, approval of agreement for architectural services with Kruger Benson Zemer Architects, Inc., KBZ, for the Dos Pueblos High School CTE Pavilion Project. Mr. Vizzolini.
Good evening, Board. As Mr. Matsuoka pointed out, we wanted to make sure that this item got put on the agenda as an action item after the MOU was agreed on. Similar to the MOU, there are some pieces in the architectural agreement that allow a pause. So if funding levels aren't met, the building can be constructed in different iterations. So we're presenting this for approval.
Thank you, Board. All right, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. Moving on to action agenda item 8, approval of agreement with PMSM/19-6 Architects, Inc. for design services related to the Dos Pueblos High School storefront replacement project. Mr. Vizzolini, you cannot sit down yet.
Thank you very much. This is an action item probably because it's such, mainly because it's such a large project. So we've finally come to a decision on what we want to do. We came in with a very low architectural services agreement cost at $80,000. Normally we're at about 11.5%. And this is a $7 million job, so you can see the savings is significant. We think that we're going to be able to construct this pardon me. I think that we're going to be able to construct this pretty rapidly. We think that we'll get it done in one summer. We had anticipated possibly a year's worth of time, but I think that we've settled on a method that will work, and we'll get a leaseback contractor on board once this is approved.
Thank you. Ms. Parker.
So we've had some pilot construction in this arena, and the last that I think that we heard as a board was that you were waiting to see how the last pilot went because the earlier versions of it weren't necessarily making a big impact on the climate in our Dos Pueblos classrooms with such poor HVAC, poor insulation. And so can you talk a bit about what you decided to go forward with and why?
Yes. So we took 2 different iterations, window sizes, window heights. We actually mocked up the classroom with the larger windows that are higher up that people thought were a little too high. And we had one of our project managers actually polled the teachers and the students. And we got a poll of probably over 100 responses. And so we basically taped off the top of the window so you couldn't see that, the top half anymore, and we asked, what does the view look like? What is the impact in your classroom? The fans had basically no change, and we kind of as a group decided that that's probably a waste of money. We tried 2 fans, we tried 4 fans. The temperature in the room didn't change at all, and that was in a room that was on a corner that had 2 windows where we could get some cross ventilation. So putting it in a single room with one wall facing out was going to be difficult. There's also some significant DSA structural review and costs associated with that by trying to mount those fans in the ceiling. There's a lot of ductwork up there. There's a lot of lighting. It's a pretty challenging part of the project, so we omitted that, and I think we're going to see a significant savings while still getting operable windows that really improve the inside view and the experience inside the classroom.
All right, so we have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor? Aye. And it passes unanimously. We will now move on to action agenda item 9, second reading and recommendation for approval of updates and revisions to Board Policy 6146.1, high school graduation requirements, including incorporation of ethnic studies as a graduation requirement. We have public comment.
Yes, we have 22 requests to speak.
So we're going to start with public comment, then we'll move to Ms. Carey, then we'll move to board deliberations. If we could start with public comment.
Yes, we will. So as I said, we have 22 requests to speak, so we will reduce that time to 90 seconds. As you're all aware of that, we want to make sure that you have the opportunity to speak, so we will see that time adjusting to 90 seconds. And if you prepare your speech for 3 minutes, try to drill it down to 90 seconds, so I'm not cutting you off in the middle of your speak. So the first one we have is Simone Westcamp. Simone is coming. As she's coming, I have Scott Westcamp following her.
Good evening. I actually wasn't planning to speak. I just wanted to make sure that I share that I was in support of ethnic studies now. But I guess since I'm first and excited to hear what Fabi and the rest of our youth are here to share, I think it's imperative that we do this, especially with urgency. I think it's also important that we make sure what's done is of quality. So many of our students have been asking and waiting for this to be done, looking for mirrors in their classrooms. And I think it's about time that we made good on that. I'm sure, as many of you know, the Black population in Santa Barbara is quite small, and so it's even harder then to be in a classroom where you not only do not see mirrors, but then perhaps you hear from those instructing you a version of history that perhaps is different, that perhaps neglects what your people have contributed. So I would ask you to support this, and again, make sure that it's quality. Thanks.
Thank you. Scott Westcamp to be followed by Jill Rivera.
Hi, my name is Scott Ruskamp. I've been living in Santa Barbara for 10 years. As I just had my first child in May, it won't be too long before I'm the parent of a student. So I moved to Santa Barbara from the Midwest, where I was raised in a rural, conservative environment. I remember enjoying listening to radio programs in high school that commonly insulted liberals and immigrants of color. And I remember blaming not getting into colleges on their need for diversity quotas. Since then, I've read more, I've met more people, and I'm now active in local organizations to fight racism. I've still got a lot to learn, but I look back on my thinking in high school and can't believe I thought that way. What's even harder is that most of the people I grew up with still share those views because they weren't as lucky as I was to have the opportunity to learn more about people who are different.
30 seconds.
So making ethnic studies a graduation requirement gives everyone the opportunity to learn about people who are different and how they've been treated throughout history so that we can be understanding of each other instead of insulting. Thank you.
Thank you. Jill Rivera to be followed by Bonnie Raisin.
Good evening, board. I have a multi-ethnic family. My husband's here, and he is from Colombia. His parents emigrated here. And so my concern is with the recent statistics of our test scores that our kids continue to fall behind in the world global economy. And I would like to see this not be mandatory. In addition to that, I would like to be able to, as a parent and a stakeholder, to be able to review the curriculum. I'd like to know a little bit more about the goals and objectives. And since we are members of the community, it seems like there's a lot of different views on what ethnic studies can be or should be. And as a person that has children of multi-ethnicity, I'd like to be able to have an input in that. So thank you.
Thank you. Bonnie Raisin, to be followed by Will Rivera.
Good evening. My name is Bonnie Raisin. Thank you for this opportunity. I am opposed to mandatory ethnic studies. I believe that children should have one language mandatory, and that is English in our public schools. I also believe that if children are college-bound, students are college-bound, that they should have the required language requirements. They should fulfill the language requirements. But to have a study, ethnic studies on them, it's going to make their study load and their achievement levels, I think, a little bit lower, because they'll be concentrating on that one particular program. I also like the idea that Latin is taught at Dos Pueblos.
30 seconds.
I really believe that it should be taught in all schools, since it's the foundation of the English language. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Will Rivera, to be followed by James Fickner.
Thank you, Dr. Reed and members of the board. My name is Will Rivera, and I think it's awesome. We have so much diversity in this community. You know, I went to Santa Barbara High School, and I had friends that were black, they were like brown, they were white, they were Chinese. We didn't really care. We were all like together, and it seems like, you know, you're trying to impose ethnic studies seems a little bit pretentious, that you're like making a statement about like, well, we want you to know about us, but we should know about the world. Do you have time to spend learning about, let's say, the Japanese or another culture where they say, you know, humility is a really important part of our program. So, I mean, you know, when we were in high school, we did cool things like we were in car clubs, and we celebrated our different ethnicities and we wanted to make people think that we were, you know, like cool. So I appreciate your passion. Can we create that passion into something a little bit more constructive? I don't think it should be mandatory. Thank you very much.
James Fickner, to be followed by Isabel Huerta.
I mean, isn't this typical that I have a request before I begin? My daughter had offered to give me her minutes. Would it be possible to go to 3?
No, sorry, at this point. No, we need your 90 seconds.
All right. Well, so I apologize to everyone here. This is the abridged version. But thank you for the opportunity. I have a dream that my 4 children would be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Any agreement? If you also share this dream, then you must vote against mandatory ethnic studies requirement. At the beginning of this meeting, many of us had said the Pledge of Allegiance. It's one nation, not 2, not 3, not yours, not mine, one nation.
30 seconds.
Indivisible, not by race or by ethnicity, The board, I'll jump to the end here. I would ask that we focus on character and not color. Use real data and reject the temptation to force a bitter ethnic studies drink down the young throats of our children. Most importantly, remain true to the aspirational pledge we have all made. One nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Isabel Huerta, to be followed by Michael Hensley.
Good evening, Dr. Reed, members of the board, and Superintendent Matsuoka. My name is Izzy Huerta. I'm ASB president of San Marcos High School, and I'm here this evening to tell you a personal story. In my freshman year at San Marcos, I spent a lot of time organizing as a part of the Ethnic Studies Now Coalition. After an amazing presentation and workshop the coalition had hosted, I posted on my Instagram a presentation slide that stuck with me, stating, "White privilege is your history, being a part of the core curriculum, and mine being taught as an elective." I gushed about the amazing work of ethnic studies and my hope for the future of ethnic studies in our schools. I was not ready for what happened next. The conversation devolved into a frenzy of Nazi propaganda, finger pointing, and 352 comments later, I was bombarded with notifications directed towards me with the hashtag build that wall and go back to Mexico. However, there was no actual conversation of ethnic studies. At the age of 14, I knew the level of racism I was experiencing was not just an issue of kids being mean, but rather misplaced and misinformed anger. If the question begs, why is ethnic studies an important and relevant topic in our community? I go back to my experience I shared with you. We cannot build empathy between my peers without the system taking responsibility for helping to build it. The data bears this out, and it's time for ethnic studies now. Thank you.
Michael Hensley. And Sheridan, to be followed by Sheridan Rosenberg.
Hi, everybody. My name's Milo. I'm a senior at DP and part of the on-campus ethnic studies group there. So I'm just up here today to recognize all the hard work that's gone into showing the school board how much we care about this. Since our on-campus club at DP was kind of more formally established last year, we've been meeting every Wednesday at lunch and oftentimes after school, not only educating ourselves about the importance of ethnic studies, but also planning events and reaching out within our community to make it very known how necessary this requirement is and how much our community supports it. So to keep this brief, in conclusion, a lot of work by a lot of really incredible students and parents and organizers and supporters has gone into this, and we're really grateful that it's finally happening. Thank you guys so much for your support.
So I just want to remind us, we got to keep this moving, so I appreciate the clapping, but Sheridan Rosenberg, to be followed by Betsy Lemon.
Hi, good evening. My name is Sheridan Rosenberg. I'm a parent, and I am very interested in being on the curriculum committee for ethnic studies. And also, I was wondering, could those committee meetings be transparent where more parents could perhaps participate and observe and look at the materials? I think that I've heard throughout some of these board meetings that it's very important for transparency and parent participation. I know that's a very big part of the LCAP document that came out, and I just wanted to express my interest in participating. Thank you.
Thank you. Betsy Lemon, to be followed by Marcus Lopez.
Hi, my name is Betsy Limon. I just want to say that I agree. I do think that it should be a requirement.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I'm going to start the clock.
Oh, okay. Ready? Okay. I feel like I was a second-class citizen before I started taking these classes in high-level education, which I think it's unfair. It's unfair for everybody. We are a nation of immigrants. Me being a person of color, I feel like I was not worthy. I was not worthy of belonging. I felt like I was fighting to belong, and until I started taking these classes in higher education level is when I knew that I did belong and I was worthy, and that's why I do think it's necessary. That's all I have to say.
Marcus Lopez, to be followed by Veronica Valdez.
My name is Marcus Lopez. I'm a parent and a chairperson of the Barbara Hill Chumash Tribal Council. Article 15th of the United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous Peoples states, Indigenous people have the right of their dignity, diversity, and their culture, traditions, histories, aspirations, which shall be appropriately reflected in education and public information. Please, board, this requirement is essential. We've been working with the board and the community all these years, and I'm in favor of passing this ethnic studies now, and I too am a parent and wish to participate within the curriculum building. Thank you very much.
Veronica Valdez, to be followed by John Esteban.
Good evening. My name is Veronica Valadez. I teach Chicana and Chicano studies at Cal State Channel Islands. I'm also an education consultant that focuses on ethnic studies and cultural proficiency training for teachers. By now, we all know the benefits of ethnic studies and how it benefits all students. I think we need parent ethnic studies probably also in the community. That might be a good idea. As a professor, I'd like to share that when I have many of my students, most of my students, 99.9% of my students that come into my classroom, and they're students of color that were born and raised in this country, come into the classroom and do not know the contributions of their own people in this country, that's very sad. For them to learn it for the very first time, by the time they get to a university, and we know the school to prison pipeline, we know that there are leaks in the educational system for students of color that don't ever make it to the university, and those that do make it to the university many times don't take an ethnic studies class. So we need to get them while they're young. We really do. And also want to just put out there that curriculum is one thing, but the pedagogical approaches are another. They have to be culturally relevant, culturally proficient, and the teachers need to be trained in critical consciousness as well. Thank you.
John Esteban, to be followed by Nicholas Silva.
All right, good evening. My name is John Esteban. I'm a first-year student at Santa Barbara City College, and I'm a graduate from Dos Pueblos High School. And I come representing the long-fought struggle of the youth and community to make ethnic studies a graduation requirement. School board, I'm hopeful and I'm positive that you all will make the right decision, that you will care and value ethnic studies at our high schools just as much as any other curriculum, that you will put forth the right educators to properly inform of our experiences and perspectives, put forth the leaders to guide our students through the storm of hate and bigotry we are facing as a nation. When white supremacy and anti-Semitic efforts feel emboldened to march down the streets of Charlottesville, Virginia, to shoot up a synagogue in Pittsburgh and murder 11 people, when we fail to teach the American people of our core values. This is why we work endlessly to educate each other of our different cultures and backgrounds, of our various racial and ethnic groups.
30 seconds.
This is why we work endlessly to embrace our diversity and iterate the imperative need for ethnic studies. It is up to us to decide how we deal with this issue. It's up to us to stand up against hate and bigotry and replace it with love, respect, and education in honor of those who came before us and those who will follow. Tlazokamati Umeteo.
Nicholas Silva, to be followed by Barbara Pomel.
Good evening. My name is Nicholas Silver, and I'm a senior at Dos Pueblos High School, and I strongly support ethnic studies as a graduation requirement. I was introduced to ethnic studies now last year at the forum they had at Dos Pueblos. The passion and hard work of my friends and the entire ESN coalition has really inspired me and made me want to speak up. I believe an ethnic studies requirement is long overdue here in Santa Barbara and everywhere. Now more than ever, it is crucial that everyone's story is heard, especially those who have been silenced in the past. To have an open, honest, and inclusive dialogue, we first need to understand each other. I have 2 younger brothers enrolled in Santa Barbara Public Schools, and I hope that the hard work we have done as a community will pay off for them. For my brothers and all the future students of SBUSD, I hope you will pass this bill tonight. Thank you.
Fabiola Gonzalez, because Barbara, you had requested that your time be given to Barbara, and we're not, that's not what we allow. I understand, but each speaker gets the 90 seconds that we were done in the middle. So either you're going to speak for yourself or she'll hit. Okay, appreciate that. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Fabiola Gonzalez, and on November 30th, 2015, I put the call out to the community for the need for ethnic studies, for us to mobilize together as a community and to push together for an ethnic studies high school graduation requirement in the SB Unified School District. I'm here today representing Ethnic Studies Now Santa Barbara, which is the grassroots community coalition that was formed 3 years ago and has been active ever since in bringing people of all ages and all backgrounds together to create a change in ourselves, our families, our schools, and our greater Santa Barbara community. If you are a member, supporter, or ally of Ethnic Studies Now, please stand up. If you have ever attended our Ethnic Studies block parties, community forums, film screenings, workshops, meetings, purchased a shirt, sticker, button, please stand up. Remain standing. We want to publicly thank all of you for your support. We especially want to recognize the youth who have been very fierce in leading our community from the start. You are a part of this movement because you want a better future for students, younger siblings, nieces, and nephews, and you want mirrors and windows for the future to come. We also want to give a special thanks to you, school board members, and Assistant Superintendent Sean Carey, and being accountable to our community and for everything that you do for our schools. It's important to us that students, parents, and community members continue to have a voice in our schools and in this requirement. It is important to us that for future generations that they have access to ethnic studies and that we secure funding to support curriculum and professional development for teachers. We are the ones that we have been waiting for. If there is one thing that ethnic studies teaches us, it is that we are makers of history. And I believe that indeed tonight we are making history. Thank you.
Thank you. Abraham Lizama, followed by Cosmeli Lopez. Is Abraham here? He's making his way. Okay.
Fabi is just like the best person, I think. Good evening. It's nice to see you again. I just want to express gratitude for the work that you've done and the work that's being done for this specific movement. I come as a representative of Santa Barbara City College. I work with the grant over there. It's a grant supporting flexible learners, which means students that tend to be not full-time, students that are non-traditional students, maybe parents, transitioning students from incarceration into school. And a lot of the work that we're doing is bringing in culturally responsive pedagogies into the curriculum and into the content and into the classroom, you know, into the spaces where people learn, where culture is actually created, you know, where we interact with each other and engage in ideas and move forward. Because a lot of the things that we've learned, I mean, for myself,
30 seconds.
weren't things that I liked. And the one thing I love about ethnic studies is that it's us telling our stories and teaching and us learning. And I'm just expressing that energy and throwing that out there. I'm a product of this district, and I think I'm much more than just like another student. And everybody in here and all the students that are keep coming and have gone forward, like, just, yeah.
Thank you. Cosmeli Lopez, to be followed by Tanya Hyde.
Hello, everyone, board members. My name is Cosmeli Lopez, and I'm here as a member of the Chumash community of Ethnic Studies Now and a student at Santa Barbara High School. I know we all dream sometimes of that world which allows many worlds to fit. I'd like to take a second to think about a quote from Fanon, where he says that, what do I want? The end of the world by Jove. I'd like us to think about this dialectical, this this movement, this rebirth and destruction that is involved with ethnic studies. We're all here tonight to hopefully say that tomorrow and the many years of struggle that we've all gone through, that our communities have gone through, that we will continue to go through, that one day we'll be able to turn to each other and look and say, we now live in a new world, a world where many worlds are possible. And so for that, and for all the communities, all the struggle that we've gone through, and for the love of the struggle, and for liberation of all peoples, I'd like to support ethnic studies now.
30
Thank
seconds. Tanya Hyde, to be followed by Pratik Dashan.
Thank you, Board. I'm Tanya Hyde, and I'm speaking on behalf of Showing Up for Racial Justice Santa Barbara. And I'm here to encourage you to vote in favor of adopting ethnic studies as a requirement for students graduating from our public high schools. This is not only an issue for our schools, but it's an issue for all of us, because these young people will become the adults leading our community, our country, and our world. It's becoming increasingly clear that the inability to consider viewpoints, life experiences, norms, and values other than those which we were raised causes social, cultural, and political disarray. It's not an exaggeration to say that our very lives depend on a more comprehensive, diverse, and inclusive education for our youth. And this is the first step. But it's not the last step. If the vote tonight is in favor of making ethnic studies a graduation requirement, we would like to encourage you to listen to the voices of the young leaders of our community who have been fighting for many years to bring this initiative to fruition. We ask that you directly invite these young people to play an active role in the development of the program so that it will be effective from their point of view. All too often, our attempts at inclusivity and cultural sensitivity fall short of our intentions and goals and create further social and cultural divisions. We hope these young leaders will be able to directly consult on how you design the program that will have positive impact on who you intend it to have. We hope that you will see this as an opportunity to repair current divisions, develop trust between adults in charge and our youth, and offer a model program to impact the real, long-lasting, for the future leaders of our community and our world.
Pratik Raghu, to be followed by our final speaker, Denise Adams.
Good evening. Thank you all for being here, and thank you so much for giving me the chance to speak. My name is Pratik Raghu. I'm a Global Studies PhD student, Chancellor's Fellow, and Teaching Assistant at the University of California, Santa Barbara. I'm here to encourage you to support this requirement as a person of color, a student, and a teacher. I know from personal experience just how alienating a limited education can be. Quite frankly, my British colonial education taught me to hate myself, and I don't wish that upon anyone else. I lacked an intellectual framework to connect the dots that I saw around me, the kind of framework that ethnic studies promises to provide. In college, I was able to reap the rewards of ethnic studies by engaging with Black feminism, indigenous worldviews, queer theory, and world systems theory. All of these approaches are reflected in ethnic studies insofar as it is interdisciplinary, rigorous, and global in its scope. As an aspiring global studies scholar, I can tell you that this is a great way for students to engage the world. I've been able to see the benefits of ethnic studies among my feminist studies, Asian American studies, and global studies students, all of them, white, non-white, of all genders. Seeing as someone else quoted Dr. King, I'll also do so. He once famously said that education plus character is the purpose of education, but the evidence of his own life also demonstrates that social transformation is a key part of learning, and ethnic studies now is very much in his spirit.
Final speaker, Denise Adams.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to address you. Denise Spangler Adams. I've been a parent here, person here for 39 years, active in schools for 26 years. I strongly support the opportunity to take ethnic studies. I'm against any mandate. As you all know, the governor vetoed a mandate of Assembly Bill 2772, so it is not mandatory for a high school graduation requirement. As all of you know, my children did take ethnic studies with Tony Jackson at Santa Barbara High, AP dual enrollment. I applaud Santa Barbara Unified because you were one of the first school districts to allow all students the opportunity to take ethnic studies. And I hope now that the governor has approved pilot programs that you will expand the opportunity so it's not just dual enrollment AP ethnic studies, that it's available for all levels, but on an elective basis, because many students have different goals, whether it's music, athletics, STEM, mathematics, and we have a wonderful opportunity to make it available. I'm a firm supporter of academic identity uplifting, reducing the achievement gap by whatever it takes, but I hate mandates. I think that every student needs to decide a course of study of what they want, and I know my poor high school kids had to take 10 units every semester to be able to access places like MIT, and you want ethnic studies, but I'd like to see it be done on a voluntary basis. And again, I support the person who said, get the parents in it as well. Give us all an opportunity. We share your goal. Thank you.
That concludes the speakers on this item.
Thank you for everyone's public comment. We appreciate it all, and also for emails and comments. And as this process has gone forward for quite a long time, so we appreciate the ongoing voices of all of you here today and over the past 3 years. I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Carey to sort of share a little bit more about this requirement.
Good evening, Dr. Reed and members of the board and community. I will just echo that as the district's representative bringing forth this recommendation on behalf of the High School Graduation Requirements Committee, that I appreciate the voices and viewpoints throughout the many weeks and months of our process, and years in some cases, because they have helped us to clarify the vision for the ethnic studies, the proposed ethnic studies graduation requirement. And I mean that about all voices and viewpoints. At past board meetings, specifically on June 12th and then on October 23rd, I brought you reports that articulated the rationale for proposing the incorporation of an ethnic studies graduation requirement. So I would just refer people to those reports if they have inquiries along those lines. And within that rationale, you will see expressed certainly sociological grounds, but I think something that's often overshadowed are both the pedagogical and psychological grounds and benefits conferred to all students that research has shown us and experience has taught us, and as you've heard through anecdotes tonight and at prior board meetings, the benefits conferred by taking ethnic studies courses. So tonight, really, I'm just bringing before you the second reading for your action of the proposed amended board policy 6146.1, high school graduation requirements, and I'm available for your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Carey. Board, Ms. Parker.
Thank you, and thank you for that one minor revision on the line in the board policy. And I just want to say, how lucky am I that this is my last board meeting and this is up for action, right? I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the community for working so hard to bring this forward, and I thank you for your patience. I know that this has taken more time than some people would have liked, but to do it right, it took some time and communication and working things through, and so I want to particularly thank Ms. Carey and board members and staff who participated with the graduation requirements committee and members of the community that participated with that, because I feel that what's been worked out it has a high likelihood of success. There was an article in the Atlantic magazine from just a few years ago around ethnic studies now, and as we have said before, and I'll quote from him, research shows that ethnic studies classes boost student attendance, GPAs, and high school credits. And it's because, I'll speak for myself, but I know that I can speak on behalf of this board. We put students first. We want students to do well and to succeed into the future. And that is why, for me, it's critically important that we pass this ethnic studies requirement. And it needs to be for everybody. I'll quote Siobhan Brooks, a professor from Cal State Fullerton, in the article, who says, ethnic studies courses dispel myths and build connections among students rather than divisions. It's important for everybody. And so with that, certainly I will support this moving forward. I'm very, very hopeful for the future. I see ethnic studies as a broad, inclusive umbrella of courses. Many are already available for dual enrollment through SBCC. And yes, parents and students should be involved as these courses are developed on our high school campuses as well. And I think this is just a tremendously positive step that we're taking. Thank you.
Mr. Paredes Ulloa.
I'm not going to repeat myself too much tonight. To echo Ms. Parker, I too support the ethnic studies graduation requirement. And as I've said repeatedly over, I feel like the last couple of years, whole history makes a whole person. A whole person creates a safer community. And that is one of the many benefits of bringing ethnic studies as a mandatory requirement. My lofty dream, and I look to the community and this board and future boards to make that into a reality, is really instituting the curriculum, the pedagogy of ethnic studies throughout every single piece of our pre-K through 12 system. As a history major, looking back now, I'm almost 40 years old, looking back on my own education, I've been deeply disappointed by the kind of history that we don't get taught. To really leave out so many of our population, to leave out our LGBTQ families, to leave out our indigenous families, our brown, red, white, whatever it is, to leave out so many people out of the story, out of the conversation, is a dishonor to every single person who's come and gone. We just had Veterans Day, and you know what? So many of our veterans were queer, we're straight, we're brown, we're white, and to be able to bring them back into the story just does them honor. And so I talk a lot about honoring our ancestors. This is honoring our ancestors. Going all the way back to the beginning, going into the future, this is what we need to keep doing. We need to keep making a community that is strong, that is united by realizing who we are, talking about who we are, finding out who someone else is, and making sure that we feel safer. I really want to see that this ethnic studies requirement, it's not a silver bullet, but I really do feel that this is going to bring us a lot closer to mitigating bullying, harassment, violence amongst ourselves. Because if we are secure and safe within ourselves, we will feel safe and secure with our community. And I can't think of one person who would be against a safer community, safer schools, and less bullying in our schools at all. So again, to the community, this is my last night as well, and as Ms. Parker said earlier this evening, I don't think I could have picked a better meeting to step off this board, because this is a culmination of so many people's hard work. Fabi, who's already gotten a shout out, but she's getting another one right now, has just been so central to this work. And so the rest of you, whether you've come to one meeting, bought a shirt, whatever it is, you are definitely part of this movement, and so are we on this dais, in this district, in this administration. We are part of this movement. But what I'm going to ask my community to do again, and I will be down there with you starting next board meeting, is keep this board and this district honest. Make sure that it is a requirement that is met with intentionality, that is met with community voice, that is met with real forethought. If we're not intentional with the things that we're teaching our students, then why are we in the business of education at all? So it is something that, from the bottom of my heart, is so important, and I hope to bring my own children someday. I'm sure they're out there somewhere. Into this district, to make sure that when they come into the district, they don't have the same mental dissonance that I had growing up, trying to figure out who my antecedents were, who my ancestors were, and to figure out who I am and feel comfortable with myself in my community. And that's my honest, bottom of my heart wish for this community, is that we all feel loved, we all feel supported, we all feel heard. And I think this is just step one. And again, we have a lot of work ahead of us. This is not end tonight. It continues on, and we need our community and we need our school district to partner in that work, or else it's all lost. So keep it up, folks.
Ms. Capps?
Thank you. I just want to thank the students. When I was running for the school board 2+ years ago, it was one of the first issues that came in front of me was this movement, and it was through a student who reached out through my nephew who was then at Santa Barbara High. And I just, what you've all done, you've been part of a movement, and that's really impressive, and you've created a movement, and you've created this, your passion is so much on display. We've had many meetings about this. It's as though I know you all, and you're part of this board. And but now it's the real work, and I think that's what's I'm feeling tonight is the mirroring of a movement now to a rigorous academic course and requirement that is steeped in what we should be, the high expectations and the high requirements. And I was appreciative that a speaker mentioned that it's not going to be a mandate yet by the state as we had expected, but you know what? We should be out in front. This is Santa Barbara. This is who we are. So to me, that's even more motivating that let's get this right so that other school districts can follow suit. Thank you.
Ms. Sims-Moten.
Thank you. I just realized also this will be my last shift to the right to say what they said in terms of I don't want to repeat that. But I was just thinking about not only is this a movement, but this is a shift in culture, in the way we think, the way we have conversations going forward. I also think as we move forward, it will create this, or eliminate the celebration of one day of a community, 1 month of a community. So it's a shift, it's a movement, and you're absolutely right. We do need to be out front of that. We need to take the lead in that, in terms of that, and I also think it creates the opportunity to do a conversation, to have a conversation. So when we know that we talk about one nation, then we know we can, because it's including everybody's history. Because I just think about it as an individual. Some of us may be able to trace back for a little bit, but I can't tell you where I really came from. I can tell you where I was born. So this is really important to even know in the ethnic studies, to start that conversation, to want to have the courage to go back and find out where you actually came from. So this creates that conversation that is absolutely necessary. So I don't need to say any more other than I strongly support it, and I look forward to working, making sure that this happens, making sure that it's at its highest level, and I also want to appreciate all the work, your voice on the ground that's there, and also the work of this cabinet that's going forth as well.
So I want to thank all the board members on this dais for all of your sharing, and I also want to say that I was even before Fabi. I actually met Fabi in Ventura when Ventura County was pushing for this movement, and so Fabi was involved prior to this 3 years ago, but as well as I'm Veronica Valdez. And I want to call out to her because I was a part of those meetings. So to me, this has been something that's been very passionate and a part of everything that I believe in. I did want to just sort of speak a minute about, because I haven't really mentioned this, but in 1965, there were only 16 black students at UCSB. And at that time, they didn't feel that the gen ed courses reflected their livelihood, what they believed in, what their history was. It was not even existent. And that led to many of the black students saying, this is not okay. And at similar time period at Berkeley, in 1968, another movement started to occur. And they joined into this movement and part of the civil rights movement to say, we exist and we need to be mirrored and reflected in the curriculum. And what happened was, that's almost 60 years ago. So what's amazing to me is that in higher ed, we made this change, but we haven't done anything in K-12. And here's our opportunity. It's taken 60 years for us to have this conversation, but it's about time. And so in order to build this, we need to start, like Mr. Ishmael Perez-Ulloa said, it starts at pre-K. It starts at home, but it begins this process that we must do, and we must do it over the course and not have to wait till we go to college, because not all students want to go to college, or they have other career aspirations. So we need to ensure that these types of thinking, knowledge, cultural proficiency, understandings are there for students to have accessibility. And I want to say that we know that this is, as research states, does make a difference. I also want to state that the district is at the cutting edge. Of all the districts in the county, I mean, we're the lead district. What's wrong with being the lead district? I say nothing's wrong with being the lead district. I say that we are leading a force because of all of you. And again, I want to thank the power of the student voice. And I also want to thank the parents, and I do respect student voice, parent voice, teacher voice, administrative voice. Everybody has to come together from all different factions, and they will. And I do know that if we on the board, we have the integrity to believe that this is not something we're just going to hand out and say, oh, next week we're going to do worksheet number 5. It's on this topic. That's not what it's about. It's about going deep. It's about looking at all of these different perspectives, and it's about doing it the right way. And as Ms. Parker said, it took a while to get here, but by goodness, it's not going to go away. And if we want to make it sustainable, then we have to do it the correct way. And that means inclusion of all voices, to look at us, to keep us on target, yes, and we want and we welcome your voices. So I do want to acknowledge Sean Carey for her passion and her drive, because she took the pedal to the metal and she stuck it and pushed it forward, and every time she could turn around and say, well, I just don't know, but then she kept going and said, and she worked it out. I also want to call out Ann Rowdy. Thank you for all the support that you've brought. Again, Fabi, Sarah Bazan, and Kevin, Kevin McKee, on the Graduations Ethnic Studies Committee. So I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to stop. I think we all know where we're going here. So I'd like to turn to my board and ask the infamous question, do we have a motion here?
My last motion. I move to approve the updates and revisions of Board Policy 6146.1, high school graduation requirements, including the incorporation of ethnic studies as a graduation requirement.
Second.
All those in favor? So, Dr. Vecchio, if you could hold off on that. So this is a time that actually I would like to call up the members of the Chumash community to sing songs in solidarity for the Ethnic Studies graduation requirement as our 5-minute transition into a break. Thank you.
Hi, Marcus Lopez here. Cosmoy Lopez, Marcus Lopez Sr. We want you to all sing along with us. It's not just us singing, but we all like you to join us as well. Kind of do like a little kind of like Simon Says. So we're not out to get you. This is the welcome song. And kind of goes a little like this. Hey, 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 hey,
important to acknowledge, all the people who aren't in this room that put so much work in, who are all over now, colleges from Canada to Massachusetts. So I think this next song is a song for healing and for our ancestors.
We'll now take a 5-minute break and we'll be back. So I'd like to bring us back to order. Moving forward. To report discussion agenda, we'll start with report number 1. And that will be on Santa Barbara Community Academy redesign for 2019-20. And we have Mr. Matsuoka, Dr. Ramirez, and Ms. Scharfeld.
All open?
I'm not sure who's going to start first.
I will offer some opening comments, and then we'll turn this over to Ms. Scharfeld. And Dr. Ramirez is here also to provide some context and support. So I want to acknowledge the staff who's out there who have stayed. This is not beginning till 9 p.m. And your presence is important. And we have been in a conversation, I would say, myself, Dr. Ramirez, and the school staff for about 18 months, if not longer. And I just want to express my gratitude to the team there who's really dived into a redesign. And Ms. Scharfeld has been in the role of principal now for about 15 months, 12 months? No, not even that long.
Not a year.
This year. Probably feels like it's been more than a year. To the board, I think you expressed to me your concerns and support for one of our smaller schools, and you asked us as a staff, what can we do to support Santa Barbara Community Academy? And I just want to thank Ms. Scharfeld for her leadership. And what you're going to see tonight are ideas, but also vision. And at times we've thought about, could this be the beginnings of different models in elementary education? The beauty of the size of the school, they're small enough they can be really nimble. And they are already testing some of the ideas they have been working on, and I'm sure that's going to come out. So we'll turn it over to Ms. Scharfeld. She's got the slide deck. You've read through it. And off we go. Ms. Anna Scharfeld.
So I just want to thank you for having me come back and give you a little more information about what we've been doing and where we're going. So first of all, we really felt like we needed to start with what our mission is and our vision. And so we really looked at the Santa Barbara Unified new mission and vision statements and really thought about what is it that we need to do at the elementary level to support that mission and vision. And so we really believe that our mission is we grow learners, and that is our number one priority. And then it's really this notion of cultivating curiosity through connected and meaningful learning experiences. And that meaning, what we just saw earlier is pretty amazing. And so all of those meaningful experiences, how do we connect to our students and make it purposeful for them? So we also started the year with thinking about our core beliefs and our values, and then brought this to our students and asked them what does it mean to show respect, to improve, to solve problems, and really contribute to our school, ourselves as learners, and our community. So we started this process really thinking about that we were looking at the school that was going to be based off of social emotional learning, balanced literacy, and STEAM. And while we are still really focused on that, of course, balanced literacy, that is a number one priority for us. But what we're really excited about the social emotional learning component and the STEAM component, and really enhancing that. So that we're really focused on our students as whole children, and the social component, the emotional component, the academic, the creative, and the physical. And it really comes down to curiosity. Our kids are 2 when they're 3. They have so much curiosity about the world, and I've seen so many graphs, and I've unfortunately seen students at now elementary, junior high, and high school, and that every year you go up, that curiosity seems to diminish. And so we really feel like students have this, and it's our job to cultivate it so that they are continuing to be learners as they go into junior high, high school, and beyond. So we start out by thinking about the social emotional learning. If you've ever heard Dr. Wagenet talk, it is the building blocks of everything. And so it is the building blocks. But so I was introduced to Turnaround for Children, and they have these building blocks for learning. And recently at a conference, I met one of the head directors of that program, and I asked him about, well, these are these great building blocks. Our students are coming in with a lot of this, and we want to build from that so that they have this mindset for self in school, this perseverance, this academic tenacity, and leading up to that self-direction. And so how do we do that? There's these great building blocks, but what do we do? And so he's connected me to a principal in New York City, and so I'm talking with her about how she's used these building blocks to then bring that into her school. So we're also looking at some different social emotional programs so that our teachers have a base. So they just need something to start from, and then we can grow with that. And then we have the academic and the creative. And when I'm talking about creativity, it's not just the arts, that's really important, but it's also creative thinking. And even in mathematics, we see creative thinking, and we need to give our students that opportunity. So, whoa, that's not how it was in my slide deck, but so it's integrated. But so we really are trying to create this integrated curriculum, and that takes a lot of time for teachers to do really well. It's easy to say, it's really hard to do. And it's really more about connections. How do we make connections for our students that is within the discipline and across disciplines? And so one of the ways that we're going to do this is through these universal themes. These are themes that we see in all of life, such as relationships, power, change, can't avoid change. So we start looking at generalizations and having students explore these different generalizations around that theme in all different subject areas. And then we come to, so that leads to this deeper learning. But I was like, how do we create time for this deep learning? Because when you get into a subject, you need time to think and process. You need time to collaborate, to communicate with others. But if we're constantly moving from one subject to the next, we don't have that time. We're not giving that enough time for our students that they need. So we're looking at how do we create that time? And one way that, and for our teachers, time to build those really important integrated units. So we thought of this idea of this core week, design week. Core week, design weeks. And the core weeks is really where the students are going to be learning about, learning how to read, write, integrating the arts or supporting the learning of mathematics, of arts. As they go into their design week, they are now immersed in the STEAM, the engineering, the arts is what's driving, and they're applying the things that they're learning. And they're applying their reading, they're applying their writing, they're applying their mathematics. And then I was like, well, how do you do music? You can't do music, instrumental music, 4 times, you know, with a lot of depth in a short design week. So we were thinking about how can we create an extended day? Now this is the part that our families are really excited about. It's also the part that I'm struggling with, how to really make feasible without adding more to my budget. But we would create an extended day, so it's an extra hour, which gives us more time with our students, and then they have that ability to have music each week. And having them have a choice of the different types of instruments, with singing as one of them. And our 4th through 6th grade would be combined. So I've looked at a lot of possibilities. I feel like every time I look at it, I get a little closer where it's not going to cost anything. Then it's just finding the right people. But that's the part I still have some work on. So with the STEAM component is happening in our core week. But it's really going into depth during our design week. And this is an example of one of our design weeks, or what it could look like. Where they do a morning circle so that they're getting, and every day they're doing a morning circle. Then they're in this reading and math block, so they're still getting some reading and math. But then the majority of the day is this STEAM, this arts or science, technology, engineering block. So it's it's very focused on one theme for that week. In the middle on Wednesday, because that's our short day, is when they go on a community-connected experience. So in the primary grades, in the earlier grades, it's a field trip. And then as we get older, my hope is that we can connect with our community and see how can we support our local community and doing projects with them. So we are looking at the design thinking process, and we're really focused on using the engineering as elementary design thinking in our kindergarten through 4th grade, transitioning to the model by the Stanford Design School, where it really adds the empathy component, so that students are really starting to think about how do we empathize with that end user. And so here's an example. This is, we prototyped our design week with our 1st grade. And so here's a short 1-minute video of them if it works. We'll see. No. Is there a place to, I don't know why. Can you click on it? Not there. Okay. Okay, yeah. Oh, there we go.
Okay, one more.
Sorry.
There we go.
So it was pretty successful for our first week. And then lastly, we are incorporating the physical. So we have PE. This year we started dance with our third graders. I would love to figure out how we can get that as the second PE time. Because there's so much that kids learn through controlling their bodies and just expressing themselves. And then lastly, we are on social media now, so you can follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, or Twitter. And I've worked on our website, so we're trying to get the word out that we are there. And we have an open house on December 6th, so that's where we are right now. Is there? Yeah, that's it. Oh, right. And that didn't line up well, but we grow learners. It looked much better. So there we go.
Thank you very much. What's exciting is to see the excitement and the passion that you share with us as you share this new redesign. So I'm going to turn it over to our board for any questions and comments. Ms. Parker?
Thank you, and I want to thank you and the staff at Santa Barbara Community Academy and the current families that are there for being willing to embrace change and really reinvent a school. I mean, the school was originally designed very specifically as a core knowledge school, as a downtown school, and it needed to be reinvented when some of those things changed, right? And it's hard for a school that is experiencing declining enrollment to make that change. I appreciate this. And it's a question of keeping at it and then hoping, right, that you're doing the kind of outreach and building the school that families will want to come to. So keep up the good work on that. I do have a couple of questions around it, and one is that some things that have been the practice in the past have been year-round calendar. Is that something that would change? And I don't know if this is a Dr. Ramirez question. And then uniforms, is that something that would change? And how much have current parents been involved with this process? Those are my questions.
So,
You want to do the calendar?
do you want? Uniforms, we will continue with. I'll let him talk about the year-round calendar. And then the parents, I have a coffee monthly for parents, and I have been talking about this at every coffee, and then shared it with our ELAC committee last week. And so that's where I'm just trying to get their ideas and what they're thinking through those coffees, and then our ELAC, which is our most powerful group on campus.
Hi, good evening, board. To the question of the year-round calendar, that's something that really started a starting point for us in our discussion. It's somewhere where the staff has, at this point, been in support now of moving toward a traditional calendar. That has been messaged broadly to the parents because it was important for them to understand as early as possible that change was afoot and with enough lead notification. There's still some logistics and details that we need to work out, but we are confident in that we will be moving forward with a traditional calendar for the 1920 school year.
All right, Ms. Capps.
Thank you. This is exciting, and I really just appreciate the clarity of the presentation and just how much it kind of is compelling and speaks to someone who might be a parent thinking, is this a good school for my child? So thank you. My question is really about outreach, and you mentioned the open house, but if you could speak a little bit to that, because I know that's often, it's such a challenge when you're starting something new, and we want to make sure that then we get off to as strong a start as possible. And I know that's front and center probably on your priorities, but if you could spend a little time thinking about that, and specifically just any outreach that might be happening with the open alternative community. Thanks.
So we are starting the parent outreach part and really we had to get on social media, so that was my first, did that last weekend. And so we're there, we're building, so we need your help. And then I think that's where I'm trying to figure it. I'm trying to figure that out. We were gonna go walk the neighborhood last Friday. We changed our plan and did some other things instead, but it's things like that, trying to connect with different preschools, trying to just kind of get out where kids are that are 4 years old. And I'm still trying to figure where they hang out because I don't have any 4-year-old friends. But that's the work that we are trying to figure out right now. And so I don't have any great answers other than I'll take any advice that you have.
Okay, well, since you asked, I think it would be important to specifically reach out to the open alternative families who we all know who they are, and if any assistance is needed in that regard, I can certainly help, but probably others have better connections. Just again, given the synergies of what this vision is, and also given the fact that school was closed and that community is so tight knit and looking for sort of what might be next. So I think that's a wise place to start. Thanks.
If I may make a comment also along the lines of outreach, I think it was really important for there to be really two things that come together. One was a coherent vision for a redesign of a school. As you mentioned, change, particularly after a really long-standing set of practices, is challenging. I really want to commend the staff. Obviously many of them are here, but also those who aren't here tonight, because they have really embraced it. It really has been a credit to their efforts. They took many of the things that we've moved forward with over the past few years as a district and really just connected them. And Ms. Scharfeld's influence is certainly evident here, but the work of the staff is incredible, particularly in the realm of the flexible thinking around time. That's something that if before we're through, I'd like to just come back to. But that was a very important piece because now it provides a proof point for families that may want to see the school. And so we talked about this some time ago, and again, speaks to the staff, speaks to the leadership, and to the parents who have supported, that they now have something to really offer parents, prospective parents, parents who may want to come in and visit. So now what this allows us to do also is, look at, for example, our kindergarten readiness network, partnerships that exist with our preschool space, to be able to afford Ms. Scharfeld, perhaps the teaching staff, opportunities to come before them or to engage with that group more fully with more clear plans in place that allow them to have not just an imagination, but a real point of evidence of what is being suggested. So now I think that exists, and we just had this conversation recently about how I'm excited to also support in that endeavor.
Yes, Ms. Parker. Yeah. I wanted to follow up on a couple of points. One is I do want to be cautious about outreach to open alternative families, because while pieces of this match that progressive education style that may be attracted to some, many pieces of this are not progressive. And I don't think that this is a replacement for us looking at creating a truly progressive program at an existing site. And so I want to be cautious that they don't get the message that, oh, this is instead of, because there is a need for that in the district, and something that is not probably quite this type of blend. And so I want to be cautious about that we're not saying, oh, look, Community Academy is doing this and we're done, because I don't think that we are. I just also wanted to touch back on the extended day. I mean, the reality is extended day is hiring people, and it costs more money. And so I know that this can't cost more money than any of our other sites, and so I I hope that you're able to figure that out in a way that makes sense. We did all get an email from your music teacher assuring a member of the public that because the way the design looks up there, it looks like only 4th through 6th is getting music, and then it's only happening after school, and so your music teacher was really assuring the public that in fact that is not the case. So I wanted to be sure to mention that now as well.
Yes. I'm not trying to get rid of music. I played music in school. My sister was the drum major at Santa Barbara High School, so that's important. But it's really just how do we create something and create more time so that our students are getting everything that they need. And so I have some shifts in how do you take personnel and shift their schedules so that they're not all starting at the same time. And so that's one way to create that extra time after school. There's still a few little components. I had it, and then I was, that's how designing is. You think you have it, and then you got to change it a bit. But yeah, so I do understand that. And I'm trying to not add more money.
And Ms. Parker, if I could offer up just a thought on that, to my earlier comment. Some time ago, I presented to the board a discussion around instructional minutes in the elementary space. And I think what you see here is I purposely left that open because there isn't a prescriptive answer to how you deal with competencies and standards and the challenges of instructional minutes as they are. But what this is expressing to us is that there are ways to work through that, and integration, as Ms. Scharfeld indicated, it's easy to say, very, very difficult to do, and very much a part of collaborative inquiry and really commitments. And so to commend again the staff that we're open to those shifts, that we're open to just experimenting a bit differently. But to your core question, the values are there, and we will continue to support the arts in our elementary schools as we have in the past.
I just want
Ms.
to,
Capps.
I appreciate the distinction. Not to suggest that this is the next open alternative, but I do think that that network is very networked, and so if you're trying to do outreach, just from a practical matter, it's a tight-knit group of people. Secondly, a couple of families that were at Open Alternative are at the school where my son goes, and I know that they just felt a little, displaced. And so I just think it's important to say, hey, we do have this option to people who might be feeling that, and might be feeling that Roosevelt is a big campus compared to where they were, and this might be a nice option. So I just wanted to clarify that I don't sort of think it's all the same, and but I do think that this would just be a smart thing and something I feel like we owe them to just continue the dialogue of new options in the district. Thanks.
You can't sit down yet. So I think it's really exciting. I love the integrating piece, and I really am thrilled that you're all jumping on board to do that, and it is difficult. So I feel like it's so important that we're providing from the district professional development and support for staff and time to be able to do the work. It's one thing to say we're being innovative and we're integrating, but then it's like, but how do we do it? Or what support are we getting? So I just want to ensure that they're getting the support they need as a staff. And what does that look like in terms of practical application? How is that support happening? And just to speak to you also, Dr. Ramirez, is that what type of support can the district can be providing around messaging and getting the word out? Because I know they're working really hard to do everything that they're doing. I mean, the idea of walking the street sounds great, but who has time for that?
I don't know.
It sounded like a good idea, but I mean, are you going to have a flag and balloons and say, come to this school? I think there needs to be a strategy and a strategized plan that is, a process of getting the word out and showing how great this work is. I mean, this is amazing. So what kind of practical steps can the district do to support that, or is there a plan in place? So I'm going to turn to Dr. Ramirez first.
So in terms of a plan being in place, I think the best that I can offer you at this moment is that one is emerging. There are some captive audiences that we can certainly outreach to. I mentioned the Kindergarten Readiness Network. That is a group of leaders in their own right here in our preschools and in the preschools that serve up their children to our TKK programs. That is an incredible group of people that actually is very influential because they connect with parents, they connect with families, and families rely on their opinion about our schools. So that to me sounds like a good place to start. Beyond that, I think that there does need to be an element of grassroots campaigning, if you will. And what I mean by that is that we also know that many of our families who do attend SBCA do come from the local community. They view that as a community school. So I think there are some captive audiences there that can certainly benefit from understanding what the redesign entails. Just to, because we have families in our current, at SBCA who have younger children that are coming in and that are looking for those opportunities to stay on board, and they want to stay at their school. So that's what I would offer up first. Again, now that we have a vision in place, now that we have some materials emerging, some proof points to be able to point to families and invite them in, I think that's a big help that we can then talk about how to support in the appropriate way as district leaders and clearing a path for Ms. Scharfeld. Now, to the question of professional learning, the professional learning that has been offered is similar in scope and support as with many of our other elementary schools. Now that we're at this juncture, if there needs to be a different iteration, I mean, we've talked about some different expressions of time or whatever it is that we might need to provide, whether it's release time or some more specific and targeted professional learning. I think that's a question that I still would, or a set of strategies that I would offer up the school really needs to grapple with, and that we would certainly be in support of, whether it means rerouting some existing opportunities or creating new ones. I think there's an opportunity to be had on both fronts.
So the plan is to really try to get, I mean, there's a key time frame. We're limited in this key time frame. And what is that time frame again?
So the open enrollment period begins December 3rd, hence our high school showcase coming up in 2 weeks. The kindergarten enrollment begins during that time, but because these are usually new families, we expect the kindergarten enrollment will show up starting in January. We'll get some preliminary numbers, but it really takes until, April, before we really have a sense of kindergarten enrollment. So I think we'll have some ideas about numbers at the end of January when open enrollment closes, but it's really, we have to be patient with the whole kindergarten registration process.
So are there best practices that are used at other districts for new opening schools that might be incorporated in this process?
You want me to step into this?
No, it's okay. Best practices, I think you're already seeing them. The fact that there was a vision that came around this quickly and this sharply is really the work of Ms. Scharfeld with that staff, because they took building blocks that some of which already existed in our elementary space and retooled those and really integrated them into something that was comprehensible. When I saw this presentation, it really was comprehensible to me, even as a parent myself. And one of the things that, you can't go out and message something that doesn't fully exist and that doesn't fully articulate. So I think that was a big, big first step. Probably the most important first step is, what are we inviting parents to come be a part of? And now that we're here, I think, I will defer back to some of those steps that that I articulated previously. Having come from a charter background, I can also tell you that there is no better place than connecting in the community where people live, where people congregate, to be able to reach them with the right, tools to convey information to them in ways that are accessible. And so, again, the fact that we did that analysis and identified that the vast majority of families come from that neighborhood, I think that there's a captive audience there to be had, and there's a captive audience there to be reached out to that may be very interested in this already. I wish I had a magic set of strategies. I think some of them will emerge. The social media presence is also very important because our families now communicate in very different ways than they did even a few years ago. So their access and the reach that social media has is really important. Along the way, I'll make sure to reach out to some programs and colleagues that I have in other districts to see what other opportunities may exist for us to be able to message along the way.
Well, thank you. I think it's really important that it is innovative, it's exciting, it's amazing what you've all been able to put together in such a short period of time. And this visual as well as your passion. And I'm sure I haven't heard yours, but I've been hearing hers more than yours. But I see that you're here and you're excited and you're passionate. But and now that Dr. Ramirez says we have something to unfold, I just want to make sure that we don't drop the ball and that you are getting the support you need to get the word out and to ensure that we did all of this work. Let's make it happen, right? Because it is exciting. I also wanted to speak to also the OAS school. I do think that we can outreach to as many families, the OAS families that perhaps might be interested, but they at least should know about it. And I think it's something, though it isn't a perfect fit, it is an opportunity. And the other thing I wanted to say also is the music piece. It's not really transparent in this document. So I would think that if you're talking about art and PE, and you are working to redesign and make sure it's part of that there might be a way that you can make that more transparent in your presentation, so that there isn't that question, that this is all integrated together. Did you have something, Ms. Sims?
Yeah, just wanted to add, as you are developing, thank you. As you're developing your outreach plan, I would like to have First Five included in that. And we have our pulse on a lot of preschoolers and a lot of families. So to offer that up, we're looking to strengthen our partnerships with schools. We start out early, so we can reach over 6,000 families in terms of that. So include us in that. I know we don't have time to talk about today, but I want to offer that as a resource.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the more we'll think about it, but we're together. You can't sit down. Yes, you can.
Okay.
Thank you. No, you can. Thank you very much. So we're moving forward to H2, first reading / sunshining of the California School Employees Association for successor contract negotiations with Santa Barbara Unified School District. Dr. Becchio.
Okay, now that I've got the hang of the technology, just to add some clarity, the public hearing was, not sure if it was presented this way, but the public hearing was Santa Barbara Unified's sunshining of our proposals for both SBTA and CSEA. So adding clarity there. This is indeed the first reading of the CSEA's sunshining of their proposals to negotiate with Santa Barbara Unified. You'll notice the items there are wages and health benefits, disciplinary action and appeal, and classification and reclassification. And I'll bring these back to second reading at the next board meeting. We'll go for the third reading in January and be ready to negotiate in January.
Do you have any questions? All right. Thank you, Dr. Becchio. We'll now move to report discussion agenda item number 3, report on Adams Elementary School, site development. We do have a public comment that we'll start with first.
Yes, Daniel Brooks, he's still here. Thank you. Okay. Thank you for waiting.
Thank you for waiting.
Thank you. President Reed, members of the board,
My name is Dan Brooks. I'm a parent and a PTA board member at Adams Elementary. On behalf of our parents, students, and teachers, several of whom are here tonight, I'm here to express strong support for the plan in Mr. Vizzolini's staff report and appreciation for the district reconsidering and accelerating the schedule for replacing the playground pavement. I respectfully disagree with the opinion that the condition is not that bad. In the 6 weeks since our PTA president, Allison Bell, addressed you, students have suffered one broken arm, one concussion, several dozen scrapes requiring medical attention from staff as a result of slips and falls on the degraded pavement. But we're pleased to see that the schedule is going to be accelerated. For the second part of the plan, we're also excited at the prospect of the district replacing a condemned building and several portable classrooms with new permanent classrooms. The new and added space will help accommodate Adams enrollment, which went up by about 50 students or 10% this year. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your patience. So, Mr. Vizzolini?
Good evening. So I just wanted to offer a brief report on site development for Adams School. So as you know, the original plan, well, as you don't know, so our original plan was to do the portable replacements first, and the logic behind that was that resurfacing the playground ahead of time was going to damage it in all likelihood by putting heavy equipment and vehicles and work trucks and everything else on this pavement. So as we've just heard, and that we heard at a previous meeting, that the Adams community is very concerned about that. I had not heard recently about the what was just reported now. So we have developed a different plan, and I'll amend my my comments here by saying that with the latest information, we'll meet over there and take a look at short-term mitigation to try and make it better. So we just passed our approved an agenda item with Flowers and Associates. They've offered to help us figure out how to do some point repair with our own folks. So they'll actually meet out at the school and show them the right way to do it. So we'll mitigate those problems in the short term. So while we were working on this, while we were working on our site plan, we found that in order to accommodate this new change, we had to rethink how we were going to handle it at the school. So the original design of the school was 2 kindergarten classrooms. Okay, so as was pointed out, the enrollment at Adams has gone quite high, and there are actually 125 TK and K students, which equates to 5 kindergarten classrooms. What we found in our research at some of our elementary schools is that we have several kindergarten classes that are not in kindergarten-sized classrooms that are appropriately sized with restroom facilities. So we started looking at what could we do to build those spaces with some of our portable replacement money. And that's when we discovered, oops, I'm going the wrong way, pardon me. We discovered AB 1808, which has just recently been passed by the Assembly. It's a $100 million program where funds will be allocated to schools that have full-time kindergarten in undersized spaces. The funding will be given out in 2 rounds. $37.5 million will be eligible in the first month, which is January of 2019. $60 million more in May of 2019. It's a 50-50 match, so districts have to have funding available, so we're in good position there because we have bond money to deal with that. The requirement is that you do have to have those classes in smaller rooms, so we do have those qualified. In fact, we think that potentially up to 14 classrooms could be constructed in our district, in the elementary district, obviously, where we have classrooms that are undersized. So this is our first pass at our design. So if you look at the shaded spaces, you have in the corner kind of an L-shaped building. There are currently 3 undersized classrooms now. There are 2 child development classes and a kindergarten class down there. And our thought is that For short-term housing, we take a look at the old library building. We go inside, we do whatever's necessary to make them presentable for very short-term temporary housing, so we don't have to bring more buildings onto the school. We take down the old buildings, construct 3 full-size kindergarten classrooms, which is very beneficial because if you're familiar with this area, it's fenced in, they have their own play field, they have their own play structure, they will have their own restrooms, and the other kindergartens are already up here, so they're all in very close proximity. When that building is done, we would move these folks back out into the new classrooms, remove these 4 classrooms, and construct a new 4-classroom building, which would be standard classrooms. So we'll have to do the work in phases. Like I said, we'll do it in that order. The good news is that moves the asphalt up to this summer. So we have the architect in place now. We're actually meeting on campus on Friday morning with Kelly Fresh to take a look at original, concept designs, striping plans, and we'll also take a look at some of the damage that's been reported tonight and see what can be done to mitigate that in the short term. So if there's any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
All righty. Ms. Parker.
I also love that Adams is on the agenda tonight. I'm so sorry. This is one of my perfect meetings, right? Thank you. And I want to circle back to the consent agenda item on working the asphalt there, the summer project, because I had not fully appreciated until I read that that while like the design work that we passed today costs a relatively small amount of money, the budget for redoing that asphalt is about $1 million. And so when I saw that, I realized then, okay, that's why the district is trying. I mean, it's a huge investment there, and it needs that work. And that's why the district was trying to be so careful about making sure that they didn't spend $1 million now and then ruin it, right?
Exactly.
And so I appreciate. I'm grateful for the legislature for having this money possibly available to us. I do hope that we move forward with it, even if we can't get the matching funds. But I very much hope that we're a good fit for that program. I mean, that would be terrific. When that would probably take a couple of years to go through DSA. Is that what you would guesstimate in terms of a timeline for starting
I would
this?
say so, yeah, because we do need CD approval letters and DSA approved drawings, but there's a process. So the applications will be in January. That January timeframe is actually when they're accepting applications. So we're already compiling the data. We've been working with school facilities consultants, and so we have the enrollment necessary. We have the site maps together that show what classrooms they are in, which ones are undersized.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have our packages together well before January, and we're going to submit for all of them. And
So one question I have is, at Adams, would those continue to be preschool classrooms in the
they will be
future?
full-size kindergarten classrooms, so I would say that's probably a site administrator decision, but
decisions,
but
okay.
I think that it would be appropriate to put kindergartners in there, because
Okay.
that's the requirement of Title V.
Okay. And then the last question I have is, there are a lot of portables then still out to the north side of the campus, and or northwest, however you want to look at it. Northeast, I can do it. How would that play out in the future in terms of redoing those portables or moving those portables?
I think it has to do with enrollment.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, we'd have to take a look at, after we're done, they're going to be gaining 4 classrooms,
Mm-hmm.
right? The old library space is 4 classrooms that aren't being utilized right now
Right.
at Adams. So in my mind, that would give us an opportunity to remove
remove some.
4 of the oldest portables, and maybe we'd take a look at reconfiguring. Maybe it gives them a little more playground space. Maybe the garden expands. There's some thoughts about that.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Sims-Moton?
So just to follow up on the preschool, is there a preschool on that site right now? So
Yes.
where are they going?
They will be moving into one of the library classrooms. They're not getting moved off the campus.
Okay, that wasn't clear, so I just had to make sure.
Sorry about that.
Oh, and the second question, with regards to the match, so it has to be a 50-50 match. So would we be reallocating any of our funds to meet that new funding coming in, or is it just because we have ready because we have the funds in the bonds, we're able to.
We do. We have money for, I believe it's 7 or 8 portables at Adams School, so that's the money we would be using to match with. We would actually save money on the construction.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Well, we always like to hear save money on construction. Thank you, Mr. Vizzolini. Moving forward to report number 4, report on staffing proposals. Dr. Becchio, you're just doing everything tonight.
Okay. I think I blew my opportunity to ever get to do technology again, but I deserve it since I was making fun of Meg earlier. Anyways, this item is really a 3-pronged approach. We've put in front of you some proposals for reinvesting in our services to students. And you'll see in the proposal, we've given you attachments for management, ideas around management, classified positions, and certificated. And so just for the public's benefit, I'd like to spend just a couple minutes just giving an overview of those, although you do have the background information in your packet. I wanted to start with the elementary assistant principals. This is an opportunity to invest in management in a place that we think is critically needed. We have the background on that is we have one administrator running a school, and that is it. And so often those administrators are pulled off, the principal of the elementaries are pulled off to meetings, and we're really left with no administrator, instead a teacher on a teacher in charge type system. And so this proposal is to hire 4 elementary assistant principals. We would split them among 8 schools. And you see the job description there. It gives you some of the duties that an elementary assistant principal would engage in. If you turn, and I'll come back, and we'll open it up to questions at the end. So let me go through the classified positions, which are next. You have junior high school secretary. This really came about because over the years we have our counseling secretaries who are serving as, registering students for school, verifying address, et cetera. And that really is work that happens throughout the summer. And so this proposal is to take those employees to a 12-month position. And then if you go to the next item, which is a roving gardeners, this is a proposal to add a roving gardener at the junior high level. Well, actually for 3 of the 4 junior highs. This position would allow for a rotation of a second gardener to be at a junior high campus for 1 week. The next week they'd go to the other campus. That campus would have the 2 gardeners for that week. Really would allow for some of the projects that need to happen on these campuses to happen. They're bigger projects, weeding large areas, doing a whole fence line, stuff that takes hours to do, and the gardeners at the junior high have other duties throughout the day, places they have to be just by virtue of the fact of the student schedule, the lunches, picking up trash during lunch, et cetera. And it also is a proposal to add a gardener to rove between San Marcos and Dos Pueblos. And so they do have the extra help there every other week, if that's the rotation that they go on, and to formalize the extra gardening between Santa Barbara High's crew and Santa Barbara Junior High. So what I did is I put a chart in there for you to see how it would equalize out the distribution of man hours, and I'm happy to answer questions about that. Human Resources Senior Office Assistant, this was a position that was rolled back a couple of years ago, I believe it was, during kind of some tighter budget times. And so we've actually been employing, this is a rather cost-neutral item. It may add about $10,000 or so to the budget, but we currently are probably spending roughly $30,000 for temporary clerical support work in that office. And so this is a proposal to bring back that position to provide us some clerical support. With some of the interview protocols and services that we want to render out of the HR department. I think this would be a valuable resource for us to reestablish. The LVNs, this proposal is to take, we have about 8 LVNs, and this would be to take the, actually 2 actions. One is to take the LVNs from a range 38 to a 48, and then create an LVN2 position, which is a higher level position, which is for more the services that are provided to medically fragile students, et cetera. So that is, I think 8 of the incumbents, yes, would be going from 38 to 48, staying at an LVN position, and then 1 would increase to an LVN2.
Can you just say what LVN is, please?
Yeah, it's a licensed vocational nurse.
Thank you.
And the way it currently works is we have health office assistants, we have LVNs, we have health office assistants, and we have LVNs. Some of our sites have the LVN serving in that health office, and then others have a health office assistant. Then we have LVNs that are serving individual students and some of their more critical health needs, usually through the IEP process, et cetera. So those are the ones where that role, and for us to be competitive really with the market, we need to create a position that recognizes they're doing something beyond the work that happens in a health office. And then the final classified position is the clinical outreach or clinical youth outreach service provider. The current outreach coordinator position, what we are finding is that lacks the actual qualifications that are needed for the complex services that are needed in that space to provide services to the students, mostly in the area of our homeless students or Title I students. And so this proposal would create that new position with higher qualifications. And then the final summary of costs shows you for just classified, that's the total increase roughly. Again, taking into consideration that we currently are spending roughly $30,000 a year on the human resources position. So. And then the last item is certificated positions, which the investment there is making an investment in the junior high 7 periods and really adding 7-period options in our junior high schools and expanding those so that students who are taking double periods of English language arts or math support are still able to access some of the elective offerings, and so we can expand those elective offerings into 7-period day. And then the class size reduction for strategic areas, this is really to allow us some flexibility. I think it said roughly, was it 10 sections? To actually have the flexibility so where we see that we have master schedules that are impacted in certain specific areas. Let's say it was English language arts, we're running 36, 37 students in a class at the high school level, that we would want to be able to infuse an extra section in there to lower those class sizes down. And so taking a look across our secondaries at where we might be able to lower class size with that extra staffing allocation. That price tag on both of those was roughly $1 million. And so the total fiscal impact for all 3 of these, both the management classified and certificated, was roughly $1.8 million.
Let me add clarification on the 7th period offerings. That actually will be used in both junior high and senior high. I mean, we have issues, grades 7 through 12. So just know that we'll figure out the tightest spots and start offering limited 7th period options for some students. And I know that leads to a whole bunch of questions about who and what. We've got a really robust system now of analyzing our staffing ratios in our junior and senior high, especially the senior highs, because there's such large master schedules. And so, the issues that have come to us at board meetings around access to 7-period days, it's one of our biggest needs, and it's also one of the most expensive challenges to respond to. For some of us who've been in the community, I ask around, when did 7th period go away? And I get different stories, but I think it was the early 90s. Was it?
No, it was a lot later than that. It was early 2000s, I think.
Early 2000s? So 15 years ago. So, whatever budget environment happened then, but it's a long time. And I think it doesn't take much to understand a 7th period day it's a big opportunity for kids to take classes. I mean, the approval of the ethnic studies graduation requirement, along with other things, is just going to create some pressure points. So we believe we need to start making some investments. We'll have a lot of work to do in secondary staffing meetings, but Ms. Carey and I are, prepared to sort of work through the nuances with the principals. So just wanted to clarify that.
Ms. Parker. I appreciate this whole plan, and I think that it's really positive in many ways. I hope that SBTA and CACA are part of conversations with what we're proposing here for classified and certificated staff in the secondary district. And I think these are really great ideas. I think that they're all really great ideas. My concern is in the elementary space. When we're talking in the secondary space, the investment really is at the class level. And I think that that's a message that will resonate well with our communities, with our families. And while I completely see the need at the elementary level for this type of administrative support, I also know that from the early 2000s, we've dramatically increased class size at the elementary level. We lost site librarians. We want to do things like create maker environments at our schools. And so I think if we have the funding to be able to put this together, that we need to be thinking a little bit more holistically at the elementary space as well. And so that would be my caution in moving forward.
Thank you.
Ms. Capps?
Yeah, thank you for this. Let's see. I just am curious too if this is if this is in addition or there are actually cuts that you're thinking about later, because it is, it's a big price tag. And so I would want to have a report that's holistic and not just, oh, this is exciting to add these new positions, but this means we're going to be having to tighten elsewhere. So that's my primary question.
I will offer a preliminary response. Ms. Jate is at a conference tonight. We have, I would say once a month we are looking at the budget for this year. We wouldn't bring you these ideas if it meant cuts somewhere else. So these are additions to the budget for next year that we believe there is the financial space in our budget to do this. And I think to the question, what we could do is the first interim is coming to the next board meeting, although we're going to have, 2 new board members that have to make sense of the budget. We'd be prepared to show you a scenario, with it. Actually, I think we could show the scenario with it to see, is it financially responsible? We believe it is. There's some information that's come forward about our income this year that is really positive. It's part of this transition into being a basic aid school district. So know that we are recommending this, but it's not going to involve cuts somewhere else to make it happen.
Well, that's certainly music to my ears. As I was reading this over the weekend, I just thought, is there another shoe to drop with this? But more specifically on elementary, I certainly see the need firsthand of assistant principals. But I do also hear a lot from parents about class sizes, especially in the kindergarten. As Dr. Ramirez knows, kindergarten grades. So I do want to just add my experience with what Ms. Parker has raised. Another point too, when we went over the CASP scores, a real big takeaway for me was when you all presented that certain schools are partnering and sharing dialogue. Certainly schools that are excelling more than others in terms of academic outcomes. And so, again, this is not for me to say, but when I read that the assistant principals, at least in this vision, would be sharing time, it occurred to me that that might be an opportunity to create that sort of partnership even more directly. So I would just offer up that maybe that might be something to think about, but again, that's your call. And yeah, those are my two sort of reference points on elementary. Thanks.
Thank you. I was just going to say, I keep wanting to say, the practical application of when this would be rolled out. I think it's exciting. I think it's but I'm just curious, you're sharing this, and then when is all this going to happen?
Well, practically speaking, that'd be for the following school year on most of these items, simply because, for example, master scheduling and staffing and hiring assistant principals would take us through the spring and into next year's budget space.
Will we be provided with transparency as to the process, I guess, is what I would, because we've been just to say that we've had other positions brought forward to us that we discussed, and then some of them we haven't heard about again. So I just want to make sure that the dots are connected and we know when are these going to actually happen and take place.
Yeah, we most certainly can do that, and this is really the first step in that, is giving you, really sunshining these ideas to you tonight.
And I do agree with what Ms. Capps has to say. They have assistant principals, I think, are going to be so helpful for the elementary schools, and the idea of providing an opportunity for those connections between the schools. And I think that's a really good way to start looking at it. I think I also wanted to just ask about the junior high secretaries, and are they going to be involved in connecting with and engaging with the community? Because one of the things that we noticed too is just what sort of engagement if we bring on new staff, that they could be a part of really reaching out and engaging with the community when they come in and they need someone that speaks, Spanish, so that they have the translation opportunities that they can connect with the parents in these different schools.
Well, these are, just to be clear, these are existing positions. So we're just increasing their time. I believe one of them is already a 12-month employee. The other three are, I believe they're 11-month employees. So it's increasing those three by 1 month. And so, their job, by virtue of the fact that they are there in the summer and families come in all summer, they're engaging in that respect. They're not necessarily as would be our family outreach workers and things like that. They're not out in the community, but they are in the office receiving services or providing services to the folks that walk into the offices.
Thank you. I just want to say that the idea of 7 periods is exciting because we really need that opportunity. So I believe that we're heading in the right direction. I appreciate the leadership on that. And the idea of smaller class sizes, it's a no-brainer. So I think this is all exciting, just to continue just providing us with the information as we go along through the process.
Will do.
Yes, Mr. Paredes Ulloa.
Awesome, thank you. So a few questions. The Clinical Youth Outreach Service Provider, as you've pointed out, you've already got a youth outreach provider position. You've got 2 actually. You've got for male and female students. Is this in addition to? Is this replacing? Is this augmenting that position?
This would be replacing.
It would be replacing. Okay.
So I did put in the narrative that we would actually be eliminating that position if the current person that occupies that position would be qualified to apply for this new position. If one scenario would be if that person were to be chosen and hired, we would eliminate her position. If that person is not selected for the position, then we would need to lay off that position.
And so this would only be for serving the female students, but not the male students?
Correct.
Okay, are we thinking about going that way? Just because I see a lot of value in having someone with a clinical background working with our students with so many adverse childhood experiences, with different barriers to just education, so many difficulties. A lot of our young students. I know the person who currently holds a position. No offense to him, but having that clinical background, I think, would be huge in working with those students.
I would, just on that question, I'd defer to Dr. Wageneck.
The quick answer is yes, but we were actually able to identify some ongoing money and made a decision to start with the young women. We do know that we have first of all, looking at the data and seeing the money is specifically for students who are homeless, and within that case, the caseload, which is in the narrative, I believe it's 27% of the students meet the federal definition. So that was the first piece. But the vision, the long-term vision, is to provide specific clinical services, but it'll take finding another ongoing chunk of money in order to make that happen.
Okay. And then just the last question is yay, 7th period, but have we talked about, I don't know what conversations have been had with cabinet or leadership around, spreading out the San Marcos block schedule? Some of the conversations that I've had with folks is it seems like it would be maybe even cost effective as opposed to spending more money. And as an SBCC employee, I see a large number of students come from San Marcos who are mid-year grads, who are able to finish up those classes, who are able to meet their requirements, and do more with their schedule. I was just wondering if that's been had as a conversation. I'm sure it has, but just kind of what the thoughts around that have been.
We have a small conversation in a couple weeks about the 4x4 block. To your point, it's a very different use of time. What's actually impressive is that San Marcos has been on that schedule for, I'm looking at Dr. Wagner, 24 years. I did my master's thesis on it 6 years after San Marcos changed the schedule. They must have been like one of the first in the state to do it. It's been there for a long time. There are tremendous benefits. There are challenges, and just know that we are going to start that conversation. That has to be a very broad, stakeholder-driven conversation. But when you want to think about access to a longer school day, the San Marcos block schedule has some tremendous advantages.
Yeah, and just the amount of time, I can appreciate the amount of time that students get to spend on a subject, really get to learn it, really get to master it. I think we kind of stay mired in this idea that a class in high school has to be a year long, and that's the only way to get real mastery. That's not necessarily true. Even SBCC has programs that are a little more accelerated, where mastery is actually shown at higher rates when something's accelerated. Again, I know after tonight, my voice doesn't really matter as up on the dais, but I would really encourage us to just have that conversation, talk to CSEA, take to SBTA, and just kind of, monkey around with it. I think it would be a wonderful model for us to follow if we can't find something else. My personal vote, if we had to choose between a 7th period day and a 4x4 block, I'd just go for the 4x4 block. Just because, again, I've seen the benefits of it, and I've been in this. I went to schools that were 7th period, and it just feels like it would just do more for our students and a lot more for our community.
And that very much would involve conversation and input with SBTA. Yeah. Or any other questions about the proposals? So I want to offer now a question for the board. And this is something that we look at often in cabinet. Like, when should we involve the board in a vote about a position, it's really an allocation of resources. And if it's a minor change, we don't bring those to the board. These are obviously very large budget items, and it's really a timing question. At some point, all of these, I would ask for the board to vote on them, because it's a big sum. To the timing question, we have some time, but when we come back in January, it's amazing how fast our minds have to turn towards the hiring and staffing process. So we're going to bring a financial model, first interim, so you can see what this would look like in terms of a budget flow. I would say that your team needs some direction and some votes in January, because the hiring of APs would unfold pretty quickly. The classified positions, some of those we could actually, if we can afford it this year, some of these we could actually put in place this fiscal year. You know, especially like the gardeners and those things. I mean, those needs are real. The certificated staffing, that's clearly a next year, but we begin the analysis of our needs. I mean, students pick their courses in February. If we are going to start allowing selective 7th period choices, we would need to know that as we go into student course selection. So just realize it is a spring process, but from a governance budget standpoint, we really need some answers by January. So I will be working with Ms. Jate about that budget model, and also with 2 new board members coming on first interim. I think that would be premature to ask them to vote on that, but they're also going to be educated by me in meetings that we need some decisions by the whole governance board, I'd say in January. Okay? Questions about that? Does that make sense?
Well, I would just say that it would be great, I think your Friday letters are really important to just keep it transparent of what's going on so that we're on top of that. So I would just say continue to be consistent, but add it there if possible.
Sorry. I guess that's me.
Yeah.
So I would just ask, how does that then, the timeline go with the contract negotiations? Would that impact that?
So we will be beginning negotiations in January, early January. How long it will take us? Hopefully we're done in 3 months. I mean, last year I think it took us about 3 months. Just know that we are very mindful that as we bring these budget suggestions, that we understand that we're going to the table. And I think we've been consistent, superintendent, board, and leadership, that employee compensation has been and needs to be one of our highest priorities. All right? But it doesn't need to be the only priority. I mean, the benefit for students as we come into some better financial times, it should be across all groups.
And just to say, the student conversations that we had at the last board meeting, prior to our board meeting, the students actually requested a 7th period. So it would be really cool to be able to talk to them and share where we're heading. You know, it's such a quick pace. So I think that's exciting. And they wanted that because they wanted to have an opportunity to take more electives. And they, when I actually asked, would you prefer a 7th period or a block schedule, they said they would prefer a 7th period. So I do want to turn, thank you.
Thank you, thanks for your input.
Dr. Becchio. We have scheduled, and I must say I'm adding all these minutes, and it says we have 40 minutes of reports and board policies. And 40 minutes, and that's without questions, if you're just going to sit there blindly and stare at you. So I do want to turn to my fellow board members. I'm not sure if Ms. Parker wants to be here until midnight on her last board meeting, and Mr. Ishmael Paredes Ulloa. So I want to kind of get a little kind of.
We can leave early, right?
So I'm looking to the board for their ideas on, does this seem doable? We are at 10:15, so, and I know, I know we pushed some things from the last time. So I guess, first, let me ask this, Dr. Ramirez, and Ms. Carey. Do you feel that it's important that we hear all of these dashboards, all 5 of them, tonight?
Yes, for the purposes of being able to appropriately document our progress on the California dashboard, we would need to report on them to you as a board.
And tonight is the night it needs to be done?
That's correct, because we need to be able to do that by December 3rd, and our next board meeting is subsequent to that.
So I guess that answers that question. I think we will be removing 10, 11, 12 first reading board policies. Is that going to cause any duress?
No.
Okay, so we'll remove those. I do think we need to also remember that we should maybe look to having workshops with these series of policies, that we could get a bulk of them done like we were doing in the past for the future. But with that said, I'm going to be quiet, and we're going to move on to report discussion agenda item 5.
I just had a suggestion,
Yeah.
because having looked through the reports, there's a lot of overlap because it goes through the same, so maybe we can collapse them all together. Would that work?
We absolutely can.
Thank you. 'Cause I found myself reading the slides thinking, wait, I just read this, right? And so it seems like there's the first 4 slides of each one roughly are the same.
Yes, we can absolutely
Thank you.
save on some time.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, well, good evening, Dr. Reed, once again, board. Yes, in the interest of time, there are, these indicator reports are very much linked. And just to start, to provide you some context, this document is an opportunity for us to just lay out where many of these pieces fit together. I won't go through all of them, but you can see from the development of an interim strategic plan all the way through items around federal accountability. You kind of see it in a calendar format that allows you to see when things either have come up or will come up throughout the year, including the development of the LCAP and the school plans that will be forthcoming once the calendar turns. We're really going to make a real pivot toward living in 2 years and completing one and planning for the next. So this was just our attempt to provide you with some context. It's a document that we intend to just bring forward anytime we talk about these matters, just as a reference point. So you can feel free to ask questions as we go along. With that said, we'll go ahead and transition to the slide deck. As Ms. Capps very much noticed, the slide deck really reports on all of them holistically, although you will see in each individual report that there are some standalone items and narratives. So I will just begin by offering a high-level view and a framing opportunity. So here's the context. As you know, the California School Dashboard that was launched in 2017 is a new state accountability system. It is intended to move us away from a single metric. As many of you may know, formerly the Academic Performance Index, or API, was a single quantitative value that tried to represent the academic progress of a school. After the entire No Child Left Behind era, we have come to realize just how limiting and narrowing and reductive that has been in representing our schools and the student populations we serve. So this dashboard is really built on a combination of local data and data that is summative, robust all throughout. Much of it is represented also in the LCAP, so there are a couple of priorities that we won't mention tonight that you can expect to see there as well. In total, there are 8 state priority areas. The ones that you'll be hearing on tonight are basically those top 7, with the exception of priorities 4, 5, and 8. But these are required to be measured and discussed with you as a board annually. If you look at the timeline that I represented at the beginning, we are looking to space these out and bring some back potentially in the spring, just to be able to give you more of a formative look at where we are as a district. This current report, this all based on 17-18 school year. And again, as you can see in that calendar, we are moving to a more meaningful cycle we believe, in the 18-19 school year. With that, I'd like to go ahead and launch into the first part, which is Local Priority 1, Basic Services. This just gives you a high-level view. You have the narrative, and I will certainly answer any questions, but effectively, Basic Services incorporates, it's one of the 8 state priorities, but it incorporates all of those metrics and expectations laid out in the Williams Act settlement. And I also would remind the board that there are opportunities where you will have a chance to see progress when we bring quarterly reports and an annual review during our annual review from the county office. But in some, they focus primarily on appropriate credentialing and the ability to have facilities in good repair. So if you see, these are some metrics that we pulled given our teacher assignments. So you see there misassignments relative to the teaching of our English learners. Total misassignments, 36, and that is cases where there might be a credentialing waiver that we might, as you've seen in the past, bring forward, and then vacant teacher positions. And this, again, is a representation of our entire certificated staff. Number and percentage of students without access to their own copies of standards-aligned instructional materials. We've had these conversations in the past, and we are in that period of flux, certainly more in certain areas than others. So I won't belabor that particular point, but our collaboration will continue and has continued with the County Office of Ed around being able to really understand where those shifts have happened and how to represent them to you as a board. And finally, the identified instances where facilities do not meet the good repair standard, and that is one. And I just wanted to highlight that that's already been addressed. And Mr. Vizzolini's and Mr. Vizzolini's staff, our facility staff, our maintenance crews are really diligent about working with us the moment that those things come to the surface and immediately addressing those. So principals know to immediately submit work orders and just the maintenance crew and facilities crew is tremendous in being able to address those very quickly. So with that, that really is a high-level view of just basic services. Again, I would open it up to any questions you may have or any clarification you may need.
Board? No? All right, thank you. We'll now move on to Priority Area 2, California Dashboard Local Indicator Report.
So we're going to keep rotating through some of us here. You'll hear me speak, and then Raul, and then Fran, and then me again. For Local Priority Area 2, which is implementation of state academic standards, I would commend to people the narrative, and especially the beginning and end sections of the narrative, which just remind us that with the California's adoption of Common Core standards, when they became the California state standards, it was 8 years ago, and it is no overstatement to say that those were, really significant shifts in how we approach teaching and learning, with far more complexity attendant to them, and far more depth and rigor of knowledge and of student skill building. So that has put tremendous demands on our professional learning programming, just to even study and design and respond to and implement standards. We are way past the initial stages of that. We are still, though, what I would consider in transition and implementing those standards. The narrative allows you to see a slice of that for every subject area, which is particularly relevant for the secondary space. And I would just remind folks that while instructional materials are related to curriculum, they are just one part of curriculum and standards. They are one way to address and make sure that the standards are in place and that students are mastering them. But that also our developing assessment continuum is another piece of that as well as our evolving pedagogy. And that's why I say, curriculum, state standards are addressed not just through instructional materials, but through really that three-pronged approach of curriculum and instruction and assessment. There's also a part of Priority 2 that has to do with access to standards, and we're going to talk a lot more about access with Priority 7. So unless there are any questions about Priority Area 2, we can move to Priority Area 3.
I think let's move to the third priority area. Thank you.
All right. In priority 3, what we're talking about is parent engagement. And as your narrative indicates and is highlighted here in the slide deck, this is really, the tables that you see are reflective of the California Parent Survey results that is administered or provided or offered to all families in the district. If you had an opportunity to review the tables, you'll see that the number of respondents is very robust, and we really take pride in trying to elicit as much feedback from as many of our parents as possible. So just to give you a point of reference, in 17-18, we received responses from over 3,500 parents in the district, and you see the breakdown there. And in terms of strongly agree or agree that the school allows input and welcomes parent contributions. That has become a good data point for us, and one that has been consistent from year to year. It's something that forms the basis of not only our LCAP, but also our single plans, our school plans. What I would also say is that we have really taken to heart parent engagement and trying to provide a fairly wide continuum of offerings, from events to programming that provide parents quite a varied experience and multiple access points, from everything from just participation all the way to more deep engagement and work in committees and such. So again, here, I'd like to say that this is a huge point of pride for me personally and professionally, having worked in this district, but also I think a real standard bearer, I think, in the county when it comes to just how robust programming and opportunities that we provide for our parents. We know that there's more work to be done, certainly in the realm of language access, providing more variety and multiple opportunities for our parents in our secondary schools, but just some of those cornerstones from the DLAC representation and support. All the way now this year, we trained all of our ELACs at the school level. So those are just big steps forward that have just proven to be just iterative from year to year. And we are certainly looking for more and better ways to outreach to parents of all backgrounds, knowing that we still have a ways to go in terms of really connecting effectively and authentically with all of our audiences. But we have really put forward great programming and just put forward, I think, a quality set of events at the school level, at district level, and also in connection with our community and community partners. So I will stop there, and certainly willing to respond to any questions that you may have at this time.
Mr. Paredes-Ulloa.
Sorry, I didn't want to slow down the train. Just wanted to give kudos for all the work that Dr. Ramirez did when he was the director for EL engagement and parent engagement, and the work that Ms. Lars Horton is doing. I remember starting with CalSOAP a long time ago and coming to an ELAC meeting and being really disheartened by what I saw. It was basically an opportunity for a principal to tell parents what they were doing with very little to no input. And I've been able to go to ELAC meetings, DLAC meetings, and see that evolve. It's, as you said, there's still work to be done. We still have to develop it across the board to make sure that there is parity and there is engagement. But I'm really heartened to see the work that's being done, that's been done over the years. And I just want to commend you and Ms. Laura Hurton for the work that you've been doing, and for your staff, that all the work that your staff has been doing. And I encourage you to keep going. I'd love to see these respondent numbers, hit closer to what our actual population is. That may never happen. I know how statistics work and how surveys work, but it'd be great to see that go up to make sure that our parents not only see these things, but feel like they can respond to them. Because it's numbers we don't see that kind of scare me. If we saw 3,000 respondents, but we don't see, or 3,000 families respond, but we don't see 12,000 families respond, that's a little scary for me. But again, you got your work cut out for you, but again, I commend you for all the strides you have made, and hope that we continue working in this direction. Parent engagement is something that's very close to my heart. Having gone through my own personal life experiences, but I find it really important, and I hope this board and this district continues doing that work. So thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Sims Moton?
I just have a comment with regards to how are we, or are we linking parent engagement, those efforts, to the achievement gap? Because we know the more involved parents are, then, we're likely to see that achievement gap decrease. So how are we linking those two?
It's a difficult link to make explicitly because we know that there is a relationship there. We can certainly speak to it anecdotally. In the past, we actually have delved into, about 2 years ago when Dr. Mora was here in the Director of ELN Parent Engagement role, we actually started to delve a little deeper into focus groups and ways of trying to elicit more information. A lot of it really hovers around self-efficacy and what people report back as being part of a particular group or having attended a particular piece of programming. With that said, because we aren't equipped necessarily to handle how to track adults. We know how to track students because we have plenty of ways to do that, but the parent audience and the family audience is certainly harder. To that end, we have talked about how to inform our practices, and what we see is that the handoff from elementary to junior high and so on, we're now at a point where we've seen that for multiple years. Many of our DLAC parents and parents that are active in our ELAC, school site councils and such, really come from or had a starting point at some point in time with some kind of programming that we offered, even all the way going back to the parent-school partnership, the MALDEV training that emerged over on the west side between McKinley and Harding, or Parents at Avance, which is an offering that is no longer part of our district, but that certainly paved the way for programming that we offer today. So we're still trying to figure out how to really quantify that, because it's a difficult, with our current tools and ability to track that progress from parents, it's difficult over time to map that progress.
And I would just add again on the first 5, we're really trying to, again, strengthen the partnerships with the school, because that is the mission, to ensure that our kids are ready to enter kindergarten. So to the point of even our messaging out to parents early in terms of how the importance of being engaged in your child's school and schoolwork. So I'd love to work together on that messaging so that we can put that in our parents, that we're touching early in that, so that we're making that link by the time they get to the school system. That's just part of what happens.
Yes.
In terms of that. So.
And I'll just say this also. We actually have family liaisons, and one of them is focusing on our 0 to 5 space. I offered during a past meeting some sidebar comments, Ms. Sims Moton, that they're out there in the housing space trying to get a hold of our captive audiences. So we're trying to meet families where they are. And trying to get that connection and outreach started soon. Would be very interested in the months coming to be able to report progress on more progress and more visibility, because I think right now even our LCAP doesn't fully show some of those outreach efforts.
Yeah, and I would just add to that point in terms of our early message, because we have newborn kits that again, we can put the messaging from the very beginning of, because we meet them early, even the prenatal, the conversations that we have with the doctor's offices and making that link. So where we can, put in our existing systems to link up with you, make sure we're putting the correct message in it. So again, we can continue to work on that.
Sure. And last plug, maybe it would be worthwhile if you haven't already received invitations to when our programming, is offered, so that you can see, the kind of information that's being relayed to parents and the kind of connections that parents are making throughout. And I will say a focus of that has been at the elementary, because we want to equip parents with the right tools and information, so that as the educational system becomes increasingly complex for their kids, that they have the ability to understand that and know how to advocate and work through our system.
So I would reference the 2018-19 Baseline Family Engagement and Parent Advisory Programming. I sent that out to all of you that Maria Larios Horton provided, which is really provides you with links to all of the calendared events of all of these parent engagement activities, including what you have here, quite a few elementary connections with the Latino Family Literacy Project, the Maldeaf Parent School Partnership. I'm going to say this, can you help me with the pronunciation of Cafecitos?
Cafecitos, yes.
So it's another engagement, a new engagement program, and of course with the ELAC meetings and the DLAC meetings. So I would reference that link because it does calendar everything. And the one thing that Ms. Larios Horton said is that if you are interested in attending, to just give her a heads up so that she has the knowledge and she can steer you in the right direction in terms of best timing or such. But I feel that that was a really, really important document, and I want to acknowledge also Dr. Ramirez, the great work going on in that area. Thank you.
Thank you.
We will now move to Priority Area 6, School Climate, Student Sense of Safety, and School Connectedness, a very important dashboard. Yeah. I'm okay. Good evening, board and colleagues. Here to present to you the local priority area 6, which is school climate. We actually just launched this year's Healthy Kids Survey for 2018-19. But based on last year's results, we saw the same trend that we find most years, and that is that elementary school students have a higher sense of safety, and then they go off into adolescence, and that sense of safety drops. Part of that is the peeling away of their innocence, and part of that is what is endemic to being a teenager in our society. And the other is that sense of connectedness to school, and it also drops. So I am traditionally try to be a glass half full sort of person, but I always like to look at these sorts of statistics and say, okay, well, 69% of elementary students feel a high sense of connectedness to school, but that means 31% do not. Secondary, 45% do not. And that's where our opportunity comes, and that's where the work lives. In terms of the sense of safety, I promised Dr. Guillermo Juan that I would emphasize the fact that our climate survey last year began at the same time. It was interrupted because school was interrupted in December. And so instead of finishing the climate survey in December, per usual, we did carry it into January, which we know we had the debris flow that happened after the fire.
We actually didn't see a tremendous drop from previous years. So the gaps that we see, they do mirror our gaps in achievement. Students who are more connected to school have higher levels of achievement. Students who feel connected benefit when we have a more holistic approach to improving school climate. And that's really where we're going to get where we're going to be able to close the gaps and also address, the 31% of elementary students who don't feel highly connected and the 45% of secondary is through improving our school climate. So how do we do that? That will also be talked about in priority area 6, but it's really through the social emotional learning. It's all in how students feel connected to their peers, but also the relationships that they have with adults. It's all interwoven. And so that's the foundation on which the learning takes place, is their connectedness and their sense of safety.
I think we're all in agreement that you have presented an important information about school climate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that my cue? Is that my number 7? Appreciate your perseverance with these indicator reports.
We should do that ×2 speed.
And priority 7 is another important priority area, course access. It's one that we've focused very intentionally on. We are seeing the fruits of that in some really positive ways, and we still see some areas for growth. I do want to begin by saying that even though, even as things like art and PE and music remain priorities for our district, that we still are very much a leader in providing and ensuring universal access to those educational experiences in elementary school and very robust access in secondary school. Oh, sorry. And that is something that serves as a point of pride for us, even as we strive to find more, to avail ourselves of additional strategies and new strategies to make sure that remains the case. I'm very eager to see what happens when we get fresher A through G data. That data always lags by a couple of years, and it's really been a focus of our counselors through the ASCA model to very intentionally focus on higher rates of A through G completion. So we see, some, it's hard to even say that it's an upward trend. There was a high year in 14-15, but really about half our students is the fairest way to say it, are A through G fulfilled A through G requirements, although, as I say, I'm very eager to see more recent data when it comes out, as that's something that we've been focusing on. And to that point, when you look at the statistics related to students, percentage of students taking at least one advanced course, you see a real jump. I think it's 56 to 64. It starts at 56, 5 years back or so, and becomes 64. And I point that out not just because it's a success story, but also because we can, in my mind, very easily tie it to, again, very intentional efforts, specifically in our partnership that we engaged in with Equal Opportunity Schools, where that was a focus area that we had and sustained for 2 school years in a row, and now have brought in-house and developed our own internal algorithms for doing the same kind of screening for traditionally underrepresented students in order to enroll them in advanced courses. So that's a success story, not just because of the numbers, but because of the story behind the numbers and the fact that it's a product of our intentionality. I've already spoken to what we see as steady VAPA and I would say increasing CTE footprint, and what's going to become most important with the CTE metric is the rates of students who are completing a full CTE pathway. And like with other indicator priorities, and I like how Dr. Wagener used the affirmative phrasing there of, what we will be doing to close gaps. We know that remains one of our district's priorities. We do see areas where gaps narrow, but they are also stubborn. Sometimes they resurface. And so it's just about continuing to be tenacious about that pattern that we see across metrics among student groups. There's something that I want to just orient you to about with these next two slides related to Priority 7, and I think we'll do this differently in the future. But the solutions don't necessarily on the right don't necessarily correspond to the problems or barriers on the left. So I'm just going to tackle this as barriers and then solutions across both slides. Some of the barriers that we have identified through just evaluating our work against this backdrop of the LCAP priority areas are things that we've heard even conversation about tonight, the insufficiency or what has proved to be a constraint of just the number of periods in a day or the number of instructional minutes you heard from Principal Scharfeld, just the trickiness of working within the constraints that are, that doesn't mean they can't be overcome, but they are things that are constraints. AREL course placement. So we've standardized that, but there's room that can be gained back in terms of how to give our English learner students more access to a broader variety of courses. And we still have what we consider inconsistent use of effective instructional strategies. I would be very confident in saying it's becoming much more consistent over time with a lot of the professional learning that you've become familiar with. I want to specifically call out the elementary examples of that with the writing workshops, with GLAD. So it's becoming much more consistent. I would highlight science in the secondary space as far as pedagogical consistencies and effective instructional strategies. But the fact that there's still inconsistency there remains a barrier we'd like to address. I feel like I'm not doing this correctly. Oh, because I went too far. And then actually it's interesting how this, there's this one idea from Priority 7 that overlaps with Priority 6, and that is, the amount that we're seeing this theme of the interconnectedness of a student's socio-emotional well-being with their ability to engage academically, access academic opportunities, and then be successful in them. I think it's just becoming just a really prevalent theme, whether we're approaching that from the academic side of the house or the socio-emotional and mental well-being side of the house, where the two are just so interconnected. And then I've already addressed the others. So some of the things that are solutions, beginning on this page, see what's planned, are, and you're very familiar with the comprehensive mental health model. We just focused on that at our recent Safe Schools forum, community forum, but also the piloting that's being done with social emotional curriculum. We heard about that tonight. The ongoing work with cultural proficiency programming that you're very familiar with. I referenced and alluded to what our counselors are working on through really functional and increasingly functional counselor PLCs, so adopting a PLC model for school counseling in accordance with the ASCA model, and with college and career readiness as a primary goal. And then continuing with solutions, you have become much more familiar over time with the language and literacy framework, especially prevalent in the elementary grade span. There was already some talk about the family engagement framework and the success and just the pioneering programs around language access that our district boasts. And then we're really fortunate to have the talents of Kim Hoy and a dedicated CTE and VAPA coordinator to just lasso a space that is really variable, but crucial and of high interest, but very dynamic. So those are some of the things that we know are working well in response to some of the barriers that we've identified in the realm of course access. 7 is it, right? So we might, at this time, just say or invite you to offer any comments or questions we might be able to respond to about any of these priority areas or about this cycle of needing to report on the priority areas associated with the California dashboard.
I think we're thankful that we had these reports, and we appreciate them very much. So I think we'll move forward. we're not going to attempt 10 and 11 and 12, the readings of those board policies. So again, I would say that if we have more ahead, that we might plan a time to do those on another special evening. And coming events, I've already mentioned, we're having coffee with the board at Monroe, 8:30 to 9:30. Any future agenda items? All right, well, I want to again just say it's been a pleasure to have both of you on the board, and I appreciate your leadership and all of the work you have done, and we know that we're going to miss you, and we're looking forward to staying connected, though. We know how to reach you. So thank you so much for all that you've done for the board. And with that, our next meeting is Tuesday, December 11th. Let's go.